Chapter 3758. Why am I so shameless? Buttface wagged his tail and said, Little fairy, if the heavenly lightning strikes, the array formation here might be broken. Then you will be free again. When the time comes, won't you be happy when you catch a few little Wu Yun? Hei Xinjiu sighed and said, Buttface, I don't mean to criticize you, but you are really well developed and simple-minded. I don't have any spiritual power at the moment, and I don't have any way to resist the heavenly lightning. I'm afraid that I will be reduced to ashes before the array is broken. Moreover, this is the cave abode of the nameless patriarch. If the heavenly lightning destroys this place, don't you think that the people of the nameless sword sect will collectively raise their swords to hunt me down? Hearing Hei Xinjiu's words, Buttface immediately became listless. Yes, it was different from the last time when his spiritual power was confined. This time he could not use his spiritual power at all. Could it be that Hei Xinjiu's little girl would really be struck to death? Oh God, if she died he would probably be struck to death by heavenly lightning. He did not want to die. He had yet to enjoy the prosperity of the world. He had yet to marry a wife. He had yet to become the leader of the 4 great beasts. At this moment the dark clouds had already gathered at the top of the mountain. Wu Yun looked at Yun Chujiu with hatred in his heart. Damn girl, you are dead for sure today. As long as you die, the 2 cloud wings will be mine again. Hei Xinjiu blinked her eyes and waved her claws at Wu Yun. Hey Xiaoyun, don't hit me yet. I have something important to tell you. Wu Yun did not want to talk to her at first, but it did not matter if he wanted to hear it. No matter what she said, he would not be fooled. Xiaoyun, you don't know. I've been waiting for your arrival. If I can't see you, I won't be able to die in peace. Wu Yun looked suspiciously at the sincere Hei Xinjiu below. She was waiting for it. Was she lying? Yun Chujiu said with a guilty expression, Xiaoyun Sai, I'll tell you the truth. Ever since I took away your 2 cloud wings, my heart has been riddled with guilt and remorse. Tell me, why am I so shameless? How can I openly take your 2 cloud wings as my own? A person like me really deserves to be struck by lightning. I simply deserve to be struck by lightning into dregs. When Wu Yun in the sky heard what Yun Chujiu said, he felt that what she said was too damn right. This smelly girl was really shameless and deserved to be struck by lightning. Could it be that this stinky girl's conscience had been discovered? That's not right. This stinky girl had always been scheming and scheming, she could not be fooled. Just as Wu Yun was feeling suspicious, he heard Yun Chujiu let out a long sigh. Little Yun, I really know my mistake. I even wrote you a confession letter. I wrote it for you with tears in my eyes. I feel that I have let you down the most in my life. Unfortunately, I can't use my spiritual power now, so I can't show it to you. Xiaoyun, I originally wanted to return Xiao Wu Yun to you when I saw you, but I can't take it out now. I can only wait for you to find a way to bring Xiao Wu Yun back after I die. Now come on, chop me to death. To be able to die in your hands, I can be considered to have died for a worthy cause. I can also be considered to have redeemed my dark soul. Buttface, who was hiding in the cave, was dumbstruck when he heard this. Oh yo. This owner of his was truly an oddity of the ages. She actually scolded him so smoothly, but what was the purpose of her words? Could it be that she still had the delusion that Wu Yun would let her off? Wu Yun wouldn't be so stupid, right? Chapter 3759. The little Yun that I care about the most. Although Wu Yun was skeptical about what Yun Chujiu said, he felt that what Yun Chujiu said made some sense. That was, if this stinky girl died unless someone picked up her storage ring and took out the little Wu Yun, it wouldn't be able to take back the little Wu Yun. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to take back the little Wu Yun. Therefore Wu Yun began to hesitate. Should he kill this wretched girl? Wu Yun hesitated for a long time and finally decided to kill the scourge Yun Chujiu because this scourge was full of bad ideas. If he did not take advantage of this good opportunity to kill her, it might be very difficult to kill her in the future. Thinking of this, Wu Yun was about to unleash heavenly thunder when he heard Hei Xinjiu sigh. Little Yun, I've committed a lot of sins in my life. I don't even have the face to live anymore. Don't be soft-hearted. You'd better kill me as soon as possible. Don't worry. If there is a next life, I'll make it up to you. When the time comes, I'll use the cloud fishing hook to take down the other Wu Yun's wings and give them to you so that you can become the biggest and most powerful Wu Yun. When the time comes, those little bastards will have to listen to you. You will be the #1 cloud in the world. When the Wu Yun in the sky heard the first few words, it snorted in its heart. At least you still have some self-awareness. However, when it heard the last few words, its heart suddenly moved. Bring the cloud wings of the other Wu Yun over to it? Wu Yun could not help but be lost in thought. If it could really bring the cloud wings of the other Wu Yun over to it, wouldn't its strength quickly soar? At that time, it was possible that he could even cultivate into a human form. Yun Chujio saw that Wu Yun did not move for a long time, and her heart was delighted. It seemed that she had spoken to this wretched cloud. She had to work harder. Little Yun Yun, as the saying goes, when a man is about to die, his words should be kind. Let me say a few words from the bottom of my heart to you. Last time, when you brought the other dark clouds to attack me at the critical moment, none of those rainbow clouds saved you. They were all a bunch of wretched clouds that were gloating over your misfortune. Are you angry? Do you really want to be stronger than them? Just you wait, it'll definitely help you in your next life. It'll bring the cloud wings on their bodies over to you. When the time comes, you can torture them to death. Hei Xinjiu kept stirring up the conflict between Wu Yun and rainbow clouds. Moreover, she kept bragging about how awesome Wu Yun would be after he obtained the other cloud wings. Wu Yun was soon attracted by the beautiful scene described by the guy. He was fantasizing about becoming the best cloud in the world, and he even found Hei Xinjiu pleasing to the eye. Hei Xinjiu felt that the time was right, so she said, "Sigh. It would be great if I didn't die. I will definitely help you fulfill your wish and make you the best cloud in the world. However, I know that you came with an order. If you let me go, you will suffer. I can't hurt you anymore. Otherwise, my conscience will hurt. Come on, it's getting late. Hurry up and kill me. I will make it up to you in my next life. Farewell. Xiao Yun, whom I miss the most." The dark clouds in the sky trembled and felt extremely conflicted. Why not let this wretched girl go this time? And then let her take the opportunity to help me get a few cloud wings in the future? When the time came, it would become powerful without anyone knowing. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Yun Chujio glanced at the dark cloud in the sky. Seeing that Wu Yun did not make a move, she knew that it was moved. This fellow was secretly delighted. TSK, this Wu Yun was really simple and gullible. Chapter 3760 was poisoned by a poison called Little Fairy. Hei Xinjiu rolled her eyes and said with tears streaming down her face, "Little Yun Yun, do you not want me to die? I knew it. You are the kindest cloud in the world. What I did in the past was simply inhuman. Don't worry. Next time you strike me, don't come again. Find a way to get other clouds to come over. I promise to get you a few cloud wings. Soon you will become the #1 cloud in the world. If I don't keep my word, I will be a barking dog. I will be a barking cat." Wu Yun was finally convinced. In any case, it had nothing to do with whether this wretched girl was dead or alive. If he could get a few cloud wings, even if the mission failed, it would be worth it to receive some punishment. Wu Yun shuddered at the thought and agreed to Yun Chujio's idea. Yun Chujio wiped the crocodile's tears with her sleeve and smiled like a flower. "Little Yun Yun, I knew you wouldn't let me go. We are good partners who love each other and kill each other. Don't worry, I always keep my word. Just wait to be the #1 Yun in the world. However, since you are already here, it's not easy to explain if you don't chop a few times. You chop a few times symbolically. When you leave, you can also chop a few times at the sword pool. That way I can escape. Dear little Yun Yun, I love you. Let me show you how careful I am." Wu Yun was fooled by Hei Xinjiu so much that he couldn't even find his north. He immediately chopped a few times on the mountain peak, then chopped around for a while. Finally, he floated to the top of the sword pool and chopped a dozen times before he floated away happily. Wu Yun suddenly stopped halfway. That's not right. Why was he still waiting for that stinky girl to fish for the cloud wings? He should have just let that stinky girl return his 2 cloud wings to him first. However, he had already flown so far away. He could not go back anymore. Forget it. The next time he fooled a cloud over, and the next time he went over, he would be able to take back all his money and interest. Well, just like that, it was simply awesome. Hei Xinjiu saw that Wu Yun had drifted away and sat on the ground. Damn it, he had finally passed this round. Buttface ran out of the cave and wagged his tail at Hei Xinjiu. "Little fairy, you are simply the worst person in the world. You dare to lie to Wu Yun, you are really too bad. What should I do? I feel that I have been poisoned by a poison called Little Fairy, and I want to be by your side at all times." Yun Chujio was already used to this idiotic way of speaking. She ignored him and thought to herself, now that the sword pool has been struck by heavenly lightning, The nameless sword sect will probably attribute the abnormality of the sword pool to the heavenly lightning very soon. This way they would soon let her go back. This fellow was very pleased with himself. Buttface was right. This silly Yun was really her savior. However, after waiting for a while, Hei Xinjiu didn't wait for anyone to come and pick her up. This fellow immediately panicked. What on earth was going on? Cough cough, the thing was like this. After learning that the sword pool had been hacked, Master Ouyang and the others had indeed attributed the sudden decrease in sword light to the heavenly lightning. Could it be that the existence of the sword pool was too heaven-defying, so the heavenly Tao had sent down heavenly punishment? In that case, that Yun Chuju was really wronged. Since that was the case, there was no reason to keep her locked up. Thus, Master Ouyang immediately ordered the people of the discipline hall to take out the document and release Yun Chujiu. Then Master Ouyang quickly received a piece of news that left him dumbstruck. The teleportation array of the ancestral master's abode had been destroyed by the heavenly lightning, so there was no way to release Yun Chujiu for a while. Chapter 3761. Let's go out and play. Master Ouyang had no choice but to ask his men to quickly repair the damaged teleportation array and put this matter aside for the time being. In any case, although the ancestral master's cave abode was a little lonely and cold, it was not dangerous. It was not a big deal for Yun Chujiu to stay for a few more days. After Elder One heard the news, a cold and sinister smile appeared on his face. His men deliberately did not leave any food for that smelly girl. If they delayed any longer, that smelly girl would die without a doubt. At the thought of Yun Chujiu starving to death, Elder One felt extremely comfortable. In order to be sure, he even specially bribed a disciple who was in charge of repairing the array formation to secretly use some tricks to slow down the progress of the repair. On the other end, Hei Xinjiu was still bitterly waiting for someone to let her out. If this fellow knew that the heavenly lightning had destroyed the teleportation array, he would probably scold Wu Yun until he was drenched in blood. However, this guy did not know yet. He was still wondering what had happened. Why didn't someone come to let her out? After waiting for a few more days, this guy felt that it was better to rely on herself than anyone else. She did not believe that she could not leave this damn place. This guy leaned on the edge of the cliff and observed it. The cliff wall was very smooth and steep. She did not have any sticky silk in her hands. It seemed that it was impossible to leave the cliff. She looked around the cave again, but she still couldn't find any way out. Could it be that she had to dig out of the cave? However, she didn't know how high the damn mountain was. If it was very high, it would take a long time to dig to the end. Hei Xinjiu had thought about letting Guai Chao summon the demon beasts, but it was forbidden to fly here and there was no spiritual power, so how could there be demon beasts coming? Sure enough, Guai Chao tried it, but other than making butt-face drool, there was no effect at all. On this day, Hei Xinjiu sat on the stone bed with her chin in her hand at a loss. Buttface ran in from the outside. Little fairy, it's sunny outside, let's go outside and play. Hei Xinjiu glared at it. Play with your big head, ghost. You only know how to play all day long. I'm afraid we will be trapped here to death. Buttface was not angry. Anyway, the more Hei Xinjiu scolded him, the more he felt that Hei Xinjiu treated him well. It had to be said that Buttface was a masochist. Little fairy, you can even fool Wu Yun. You'll find a way to leave this damn place sooner or later. It's all that nameless patriarch's fault. Why did he cultivate on the mountain peak for no reason? He's simply full of himself. Yun Chujiu suddenly stood up. What did you say? Say it again. Buttface jumped in fright and stammered out what he had just said. Yun Chujiu's eyes lit up. That's right. Since that nameless patriarch was cultivating here, he must have a way to leave. Otherwise, how did he build the teleportation array? However, how did he leave? Hei Xinjiu shared her thoughts with Buttface, who fawned over her again. Then he said excitedly, Little fairy, I believe that you will definitely think of a way to leave. Take your time to think about it. I will go out and play with my own shadow for a while. Yun Chujiu, she couldn't be bothered to scold Buttface anymore. Countless thoughts flashed through her mind. How did the nameless patriarch leave? Perhaps he had some sort of rope on him and climbed down the cliff? Although this was feasible, wasn't it a little too uncool for the patriarch to do this? Then how did he leave? Chapter 3762. The miserable Buttface. While Hei Xinjiu was thinking, Buttface's excited voice came from outside. Little fairy, why are there two shadows? Am I going to become two of me? Yun Chujio frowned. What a mess. However, she still came out of the cave and saw Buttface spinning in a circle. There was an obvious shadow on the ground and a faint shadow. If she didn't pay attention, she wouldn't be able to see it at all. When Buttface saw Yun Chujio come out, he said smugly, "Little fairy, do you see it? I have 2 shadows. But you don't have any." Yun Chujio looked at her feet. Sure enough, she only had 1 shadow and only Buttface had 2 shadows. Yun Chujio frowned. She didn't think that this was a magical thing. The number of shadows corresponded with the number of light sources. This could only mean that Buttface was in a position other than the sun. There was another light source. Yun Chujio walked to Buttface's side. Sure enough, 2 shadows appeared under her feet. She estimated the direction and looked into the distance. Amidst the clouds, she could vaguely see a faint light at the bottom of the slope in the distance. It seemed that something was reflecting the light of the sun, so 2 shadows appeared. Yun Chujio was immediately interested. However, the light at the bottom of the slope was very faint, and it was blocked by the clouds, so she could not see the specific situation. This guy blinked his eyes and marked the direction of the light source on the ground. Then he took out his large kitchen knife to look for an angle to reflect the light of the sun, trying to see the situation at the bottom of the slope clearly. Perhaps it was because he had swallowed a lot of sword light, but the large kitchen knife was much brighter, so it could be used as a mirror. Yun Chujio finally managed to reflect the sunlight in the marked direction after many attempts. However, the area of the kitchen knife was too small, so she could only vaguely see the shimmering water below it. Shinjio suddenly had a guess. Could it be that there was a pond under the mountain? Yun Chujio suddenly felt that her previous thought might be wrong. Perhaps the reason why Patriarch Nameless treated this place as a cave abode was not because it was pretentious, but because of the pond below? Then the question now was, should she jump or not? Even if there really was a pool below, who knew if there were aquatic demon beasts inside? She might die if she jumped. However, if she didn't jump, she didn't know what the current situation was like. She couldn't just sit here and wait for death, right? Shinjio blinked her eyes, took the large kitchen knife and chopped a rock, throwing it in the direction of the light. After a long while, Yun Chujio heard a splash coming from below. She guessed correctly. It was indeed water below. And judging from the sound, the pool was very deep. She tilted her ears to listen but did not hear any other sounds. Could it be that there were no demon beasts below? This fellow threw a few more rocks down, but the effect was the same as the first rock. Other than the sound of falling into the water, there was no other sound. Shinjio was at a loss. Should she jump or not? Unfortunately, before Shinjio could come to a conclusion, the miserable Buttface fell down. It was like this. Buttface was shocked by Zinjia's cleverness. Just because it had an extra shadow, she found the pool below? How did she do it? Therefore, this fellow would lie on the edge of the cliff and look down, trying to find some clues. Coincidentally, the rock on the edge of the cliff was a little loose, so Buttface did not notice and fell down. Chapter 3763. Pool of Water. Yun Chujio heard a thump in the cave and thought that Buttface had thrown another stone, so she didn't care. After a long time, Buttface didn't come in to show off. Yun Chujio walked out of the cave suspiciously and looked around, but she didn't see Buttface. Yun Chujio's heart sank. This platform was only so big, where could Buttface go? Could he have fallen down? She lay on the edge of the cliff and shouted, "Buttface, Buttface." Other than the whistling wind, there was no other sound. Yun Chujio suddenly saw a clear mark on the edge of the cliff. Her head buzzed. Without a doubt, Buttface had fallen down. Yun Chujio was furious. Buttface was an idiot. Why was he lying so close to the cliff? Did he fall to his death? Or was he eaten by some demon beast? Otherwise, why was there no movement at all? Although Yun Chujio despised Buttface, she couldn't just leave him to die, right? What if he didn't die? However, would she lose her life if she jumped down? In the end, Yun Chujio gritted her teeth and began to hack at the cliff wall with her cleaver. The cleaver was so sharp that it could almost make a dent that could fit a foot. Yun Chujio climbed down with difficulty bit by bit. As she climbed, she continued to call out to Buttface. Finally, after she had climbed for some distance, Buttface's voice could be heard faintly from below. Although she couldn't hear what he said clearly, it was clear that this idiot was safe and sound. Yun Chujio heaved a sigh of relief, but she still didn't dare to be careless. She climbed down bit by bit. Even if Buttface was fine, it didn't mean that she would be fine even if she jumped down. There was a certain probability for many things, not to mention that Buttface was much lighter than her. Even if she fell into the water, she would be in a much better condition than her. After an unknown amount of time, Yun Chujio finally passed through the layers of clouds and saw the situation below. The deep blue pool water was intoxicating. Buttface was swimming happily inside. It was simply too beautiful. Hei Xinjia's heart was filled with hatred. Damn Buttface. I'll deal with him later. Seeing that there was no danger below, Yun Chujio did not waste any more effort. She directly jumped into the pool water. The pool was not as cool as Yun Chujio imagined. Instead, it was a comfortable temperature. No wonder Buttface enjoyed it so much. Buttface eagerly swam over. Little fairy, you are so smart. It is indeed a pool down here. It is a pity that there is not a single fish here. Otherwise, I could have caught a few for you to enjoy. Yun Chujio naturally knew that Buttface was trying to be a good boy so that she wouldn't have to deal with it. However, she didn't have the time to deal with it now. She wasn't afraid of settling the score. She would deal with it when she got out. Yun Chujio looked around. Other than the cliff that she had jumped down from, the surrounding three sides were also cliff walls. Moreover, they were all bare and not a single blade of grass grew. She originally thought that this was an exit, but now it seemed that she wouldn't be able to get out either. Could it be that the nameless ancestral master had come all this way just to take a bath here? Was that why she went through so much trouble to build a cave abode? Was she crazy? Of course, this pool of water wasn't stagnant water. There should be a spring or an underground river underneath, but her water-repellent bead was in her storage ring, so she had no way of getting down to the bottom of the water. Chapter 3764. There was a ghost. Although Buttface was a good swimmer, he was not an aquatic demon beast after all. He was only limited to swimming. Therefore, the matter of finding the spring or going out of the underground river was basically lost. Yun Chujio made up her mind. After going out this time, she would make the water-repellent bead into a pendant and hang it around her neck. Otherwise, if she encountered such a situation again, she would learn from her mistakes. After a while, Buttface was obviously refreshed. After all, there was not even a fish in the pool. It was really boring. She might as well play with her own shadow. This guy blinked his eyes. Little fairy, why don't we climb up again? Yun Chujio wished that she could drown it in the water. Climb up? It was easy to say. It was okay to climb down, but it was not so easy to climb up. When Buttface saw Yun Chujio's gloomy face, he shrunk his neck and did not dare to make a sound. He was also very innocent, okay? He did not want to fall down. When he fell down, he was shocked. He thought that he, a fierce beast of his generation, had been smashed into meat paste. Fortunately, nothing happened in the end. In the future, no matter what, he had to stay away from the edge of the cliff. Dog 2 felt that the atmosphere was a little awkward, so it tried to find something to say. Little fairy, look at the clouds and mist above. How do you think the water light we saw before was reflected up there? Yun Chujio frowned when she heard Dog 2's words. Because of the clouds and mist, the light here was not so bright even in the daytime. The water light was not enough to reflect the light that passed through the clouds. Then what was the reflection of the light that she had seen before? Perhaps there was a gap in the clouds and fog? Or was there some treasure under the pool? Thinking of this, Yun Chujio suddenly became energetic. She took a deep breath and dived into the water. For some reason, Buttface also dived into the water. There was white sand under the pool, but there was nothing on it. Not to mention treasures, there was not even a single water plant. Yun Chujio couldn't help but feel a little discouraged. It seemed that this was just an ordinary pool. He had to think of a way to get up there. Perhaps the sect would send someone to pick her up. However, after all this trouble, the sky had already darkened. Yun Chujio could only use her large kitchen knife to cut a pile of stones and place them at the edge of the pool. This way at least she and Buttface wouldn't have to soak in the water. Dog 2 said obsequiously, Little fairy, I know that no difficulties or obstacles can stop you. You can always come up with a good idea. You are the smartest bad person I have ever met. Yun Chujio couldn't be bothered with it. Fortunately, the temperature around the pool wasn't low. Otherwise, she would have been drenched and frozen. She didn't know if it was because of the night, but a lot of the clouds had dissipated. She could vaguely see a full moon. Only then did Yun Chujio remember that today was September 15th. She had actually entered the Nameless Sword sect for more than a month. However, during this month she spent most of her time on the mountain top. It must have been quite tragic. Thinking of this, Yun Chujio picked up the big kitchen knife and muttered, small fry, this is all your fault. If you weren't greedy and swallowed so many sword lights in one go, would I have fallen to this state? Are you stupid? Don't you know that water flows slowly? If you insist on eating until you become a fat man, aren't you afraid of being stuffed? While Hei Xinjie was mumbling, Buttface tugged at her sleeve with his paw and said in a trembling voice, Little fairy, there's a ghost. Chapter 3765. Mysterious sword technique. Yunchuju almost slapped Buttface into the pool. You, an ancient beast, are afraid of ghosts? It would make people laugh out loud. Besides, it would be great if there were ghosts in this godforsaken place. Then she could find a way out first. Although Yunchuju felt that Buttface was trying to scare her, she still looked in the direction that Buttface was pointing. However, other than a stone wall that she could vaguely see, there was nothing unusual and there were no ghosts. Buttface, where's the ghost? Where's the ghost? I think you're the ghost. Yunchuju said angrily. Buttface bit his paw. Ouch, it hurts. This proved that he was not dreaming just now. How could he have disappeared? Yunchuju glared at Buttface. She thought that he was just messing around. She raised her kitchen knife to check how the cracks were mending. At that moment, Buttface cried out again, "Ah, ghost. The ghost has appeared again. Little fairy, save me. I'm so scared." Yunchuju put down her kitchen knife. When she looked again, there was still nothing. She was so angry that she kicked Buttface into the pool. Buttface, if you continue to talk nonsense, you can soak in the water tonight. Little fairy, I'm not lying to you. There was really a ghost over there. Buttface explained anxiously. He had really seen a ghost. Seeing that Buttface did not look like he was lying, Yunchuju thought about what had happened just now. Finally, her gaze fell on the kitchen knife. Was it because the kitchen knife reflected the moonlight? Yunchuju held the large kitchen knife and kept trying. Finally, she saw the ghost that Dog 2 had mentioned. The reflection of the light from the large kitchen knife shone on the stone wall opposite them. A human figure appeared on top of it. It was a human figure who was brandishing a sword. Dog 2 crawled out of the pool and said with a trembling voice, Look. I'm not lying to you, right? If that's not a ghost, what is it? Yunchuju was not in the mood to pay attention to it. She looked at the figure dancing with her sword with a burning gaze. Although the move was surprisingly slow, it gave off a feeling that it was not simple. As she looked at it, Yunchuju's eyes could not help but light up. She realized that some of the moves used by the figure looked very familiar. Wasn't this the move that old man Ouyang used when he was competing with her? It was just that the moves used by this figure were even more mysterious than old man Ouyang's. There were actually thousands of changes in one move. It was simply too unbelievable. When Buttface saw that Yunchuju was lost in her thoughts, he tactfully did not disturb her anymore. He was very pleased in his heart. See, Buttface was a beast of fortune. He could casually fall into a pool and let the little fairy learn a mysterious sword technique. The little fairy would definitely reward him well. Yunchuju looked at the rock wall in a daze, memorizing every move in her heart. To be honest, she did not think that sword techniques were that great. Entering the nameless sword sect was just a choice she had no choice but to make. However, when she saw the sword technique used by the figure on the rock wall, she felt that she was a frog at the bottom of a well in the past. The profoundness of this swordsmanship was beyond her imagination. She even felt that if her spiritual power reached a certain level, she would be invincible just by using this swordsmanship. Although she herself felt that this idea was a little ridiculous, she had to admit that this swordsmanship had opened the door to a new world. However, in the end there was no way to see it. This guy was so anxious that he wanted to hit the wall, but there was no better way. She could only comfort herself and wait until tomorrow night to continue watching. She would definitely be able to see the next move. However, on the second night, no matter how she adjusted the position of the kitchen knife, she could not see the figure on the stone wall anymore. 3 days passed in a row. Hei Xinjie thought of countless ways, but she still could not see the figure on the stone wall. Buttface said weakly, Little fairy, maybe it's not the light. Could it be that the ghost only came out on a full moon? Yunchuju was stunned. She was really smart and muddled for a moment. What Buttface said made sense. It was very likely that the shadow would only appear on a full moon. It was useless for her to do anything now. Yunchuju suddenly had an idea. Could it be that the nameless patriarch had accidentally discovered the sword technique on the cliff in this pool, so he built a cave abode to cover his tracks? The more Yun Chujio thought about it, the more she felt that her idea was reliable. The move used by Master Ouyang had obviously evolved from the move on the cliff. Perhaps the Nameless Patriarch had learned the sword technique from the cliff and founded the Nameless Sword Sect. Why was it called the Nameless Sword Sect? Wasn't it because he didn't know what the name of the sword technique was? However, there was another suspicious point, which was why the pond would occasionally reflect light. Could it be that the clouds would occasionally fade? Yun Chujio pondered for a long time, but she still couldn't figure it out. The question before her now was, should she wait here for another month or think of a way to go up or find another way out? It was obviously not realistic to wait for a month. There was only a small piece of land that she had built with stones by the side of the pool. These 3 days had almost driven her crazy. It would not work even if she climbed up. Not only would it be risky, but she might also be trapped up there forever. Therefore, it was better to think of a way to find another way out. Otherwise, she would have to dig a hole in the wall of the mountain. However, it would take a long time before they could dig it out. This was equivalent to Yugong moving the mountain. While Yun Chujio was soaking in the pool and sighing, Buttface said excitedly, "Fish. Fish. Little fairy has fish." Before Yun Chujio could regain her senses, she saw Buttface diving into the water. It was obvious that he was going to catch fish. Yun Chujio frowned. She and Buttface had searched the pool dozens of times. There wasn't even any water grass, let alone fish. How could a fish suddenly appear? She also dove into the water curiously. She saw Buttface chasing after a small silver fish the size of a palm. The fish swam quickly and soon disappeared into the sand. Buttface was so angry that he used his claws to dig and dig. Then he and Heishinjio were in a tragic situation. The sand suddenly collapsed and a huge gust of air swept over, sucking both Buttface and Yun Chujio in. Yun Chujio only had one thought at the moment, and that was to strangle this idiot Buttface to death. The water came pouring in from all directions. Yun Chujio felt that she was going to drown for a moment, but this guy suddenly blessed her heart. Oh my, she still had Guaichao. What was she afraid of? She just had to drink up the pool of water. As for Buttface, there was nothing she could do. She could only hope that he could hold on until she drank up the pool of water. Just as Heishinjio was about to drink up the water in the pond, she did not expect that her long-lost spiritual power had recovered. The guy quickly took out 2 water-repellent beads and held one for himself. Just as he was about to give the other one to Buttface, he saw Buttface with his eyes closed and his belly full. He was floating up. Could it be that Buttface had drowned? Yun Chujio could not care less and quickly swam to Buttface's side. She dragged him to the shore and began to squeeze the water in his stomach. Although the water in his stomach was squeezed out, Buttface still did not breathe or have a heartbeat. Heishinjio gritted her teeth. It seemed that she could only do artificial respiration. Just as Heishinjio approached Buttface with a heroic expression, Buttface opened his dog eyes. "Little fairy. What are you doing? Although I like you, I don't like you in that way. You don't taint my innocence." Heishinjio, she really wanted to throw this idiot back into the water. Seeing that Buttface was alive and kicking again, Heishinjio couldn't be bothered with him. Only then did she have the time to take a look at their surroundings. There were moss-covered rocks under their feet, and not far away was a slow-flowing water. It seemed that this place was an underground river. Moreover, the water temperature was higher than ordinary river water. It was very likely that it was made of hot spring water. PN0V1 calm. Just as Yun Chujio was thinking about it, Buttface ran to Yun Chujio's side and said, "Little fairy, I thought I was dead for sure just now. I didn't expect that I would survive the disaster. Indeed, there are many benefits to following a wicked person like you. However, you are not allowed to have any ideas about me in the future. You are a human and I am a beast. We cannot be together. Moreover, if that evil star knows that you have a crush on me, he will kill me. Get lost." Yun Chujio kicked Buttface into the dark river. She should not have saved this idiot just now. Now that Buttface had recovered his spiritual power, it was obvious that he was much more flexible than before. He simply started to catch fish in the water. Not to mention he really caught a few small silver fish that he had seen before. He said eagerly, "Little fairy, this fish looks very fragrant. Let's roast it and eat it." Yun Chujio had been craving for fish these days. She immediately took out dry wood from her storage ring and began to roast the fish. Of course, while waiting for the fish to be cooked, she and Buttface killed 10 meat buns and a roast chicken. Even so, when the aroma of the grilled fish spread, Hei Shinjio and Buttface were still drooling. Oh, this grilled fish was too fragrant. The two didn't bother to burn their mouths and quickly ate the small fish. After eating the 2 fish, they realized that there were still a few in the spirit beast bag. It didn't seem good to eat alone. Sure enough, Xiao Hanyo said sourly, "Master, aren't you being too biased? You only know how to pet Buttface now. It really makes us sad." Buttface said proudly, "Ever since I, Buttface, became the little fairy's spirit beast, I have received the little fairy's favor alone. There are a few spirit beasts, but the little fairy only dotes on me. So I advised the fairy to be even with the rain and dew, but the fairy refused to listen. Fairy just dotes on me, just dotes on me." Yun Chujio. The corner of Yun Chujio's eyes twitched, and then she put the smug Buttface into the spirit beast bag. Sure enough, soon the scream of Buttface came from her spiritual sense, and it was the most tragic kind. Yun Chujio pursed her lips. Damn it! This idiot had been playing tricks recently, so it was a good time to teach him a lesson. Yun Chujio did not stay idle either. She used the ball of yarn to weave a sticky net and started fishing in the water. Her efficiency was much higher than Buttface's. In a short while she had caught more than 100 fish. However, this fellow felt that there were too many monks and too little porridge. It was still not enough, so she continued to catch fish along the way. The fish in the dark river had suffered. They basically had no natural enemies in this place. Who would have thought that they would encounter such a jinx? They were almost wiped out by this fellow. Yun Chujio recalled that she had obtained quite a number of immortal springs in the origin-killing sect. Later on, she had gotten Wool Ball to bring them into the Great Void Mystic Realm. She did not know how Wool Ball operated it. In any case, the green jade prawns and green jade lotus roots had taken root in the Great Void Mystic Realm in the end. It was most likely because although the green jade prawns and green jade lotus roots were rare, their grades were not high. In any case, because they were produced and sold by themselves, Yun Chujio was already tired of eating them. This fellow followed the same pattern and got a lot of dark river water. Then he got the ball of wool to bring it into the Great Void Mystic Realm and even the small silver fish. Hei Shinjio suddenly felt very satisfied. She could eat as much as she wanted in the future. After all, it was her own home. After eating and drinking, this fellow finally began to think about serious matters. He did not know where the dark river led to, so it was better to be more careful. Therefore, he took off his spirit-concealing ring and swam forward carefully. When Hei Shinjio was swimming forward, she heard a voice from afar. Hei Shinjio was shocked and looked around. Finally, she saw 2 protruding rocks on the roof of the cave not far away. The gap in the middle was just enough to hide her figure. She immediately jumped up and held her breath to look down. Soon the voice became clear. "Senior Brother Wan, it has been almost a month. That Yun Chujio is most likely dead. I heard that the discipline hall was careless and did not leave anything for her to eat. That stinky girl did bring a puppy in, but it was only enough to eat for 2 days. Now she has starved to death. She deserves it. Who asked her to offend Senior Brother Wan and Elder Wan? She is simply courting death." Yun Chujio frowned and felt that the voice was somewhat familiar. She looked carefully and saw that there were 3 people standing on the ship. The 2 people who spoke were Luo Hai and Yu Bo, who had reported her. As for the other person, she also knew him. It was the grandson of Elder Wan, Wan Pengcheng, who had been beaten up by her. They were really enemies on a narrow road. Wan Pengcheng only sneered when he heard the words of his 2 followers and did not reply. Wan Pengcheng snorted coldly, 2 to 3 months? Don't worry, that teleportation formation will not be fixed for at least half a year. That bitch is dead for sure. Hearing this, Yun Chujio couldn't help but be a little dumbfounded. So she hadn't been released for such a long time. Was it because that idiot Wu Yun had broken the teleportation array? And what did that Wan Pengcheng mean by his last words? Could it be that he had done something to it? Just as Yun Chujio was thinking, she heard Luo Hai say with some doubt, "Senior Brother Wan, let's not talk about that bitch first. How come we have walked so far and haven't seen a worryless fish?" Yubo also echoed, "Yeah, if we had walked so far in the past we would have caught a few. How come we haven't seen any today?" Wan Pengcheng said impatiently, "What's the rush? If we look further ahead we might have already swum to the front." Luo Hai immediately flattered. Senior brother Wan is still able to keep his cool. There's a formation set up at the exit of this underground river. Besides, there are no other living creatures in this underground river other than the worryless fish, so there definitely won't be any problems. Those worryless fish must have gathered at the front. Yun Chujio couldn't hear the words of the three people behind her clearly because the boat was too far away. The corners of this fellow's mouth curled up into a sneer. Worryless fish? Now that those little things were all in her great void mystic realm, these three idiots wouldn't be able to laugh very soon. This fellow couldn't help but secretly rejoice. Fortunately, after she roasted the fish, she removed all traces of it one by one for safety reasons. Otherwise, it would really be a bad thing. However, now was a good opportunity to leave. Since the three of them had entered, perhaps the array formation at the exit had not been activated. It was a good opportunity to slip out. Hence, Yun Chujio jumped into the pool and quickly swam towards the exit of the underground river. As expected, there was only a huge net blocking the exit of the underground river. There was no array formation. Yun Chujio easily passed through the huge net. PN0V1 outside the entrance was a valley. The water that flowed out formed a stream that meandered forward. Yun Chujio did not dare to stay any longer. She carefully removed the footprints that she had left behind and then leaped away from the stream. As she ran, she thought about what she had said after seeing Master Ouyang. After running for a few miles, she checked the map and realized that she was actually very close to the teleportation formation that she had entered the nameless ancestral master's cave. He rolled his eyes and immediately had an idea. She carefully approached the teleportation array and did not see the disciples who were originally guarding it. There were only a few disciples who were repairing the teleportation array there. The few disciples were chatting and laughing while repairing the array leaves at a leisurely pace. They were obviously very perfunctory. Hei Shinjio secretly hated them. According to their negative attitude, they would probably not be able to repair it in half a year. They were all fucking bad things. Yun Chujio secretly released Xiao Mogu and gave a few instructions. Then Xiao Mogu burrowed into the ground. After a while, when the few disciples who repaired the array were chatting and laughing, one of them looked at a place not far away in surprise and exclaimed, "Oh my God, look, how can those mushrooms move on their own?" The other disciples looked in the direction he pointed and indeed, there were a few brightly colored poisonous mushrooms jumping into the depths of the forest. Could these mushrooms be some rare spiritual plants? Oh my God, brothers, what are you still standing there for? We're rich. As that person spoke, he rushed into the forest. The other disciples also dropped the things in their hands and hurriedly followed him. Seeing that those people had gone far away, Yun Chujio then kept the Xiao Mogu that had already returned into her spirit beast bag. Then she leaped onto the teleportation platform and lay on her back like a little bastard. Very soon, those disciples who had repaired the array formation returned with a few poisonous mushrooms in their hands in high spirits. However, when they saw Hei Shinjio on the teleportation platform, they were instantly dumbfounded. They almost threw the poisonous mushroom on the ground. How did Yun Chujio appear? Wasn't the teleportation platform broken? Besides, even if the teleportation platform was good, she wouldn't be able to come out without a jade token, right? Just when they were dumbfounded, Hei Shinjio opened her eyes and looked at them blankly. Then she revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. "I came out? I really came out? It seems that the patriarch did not lie to me. He really sent me out." The few disciples were even more dumbfounded. What did the patriarch mean by sending her out? Just as the few of them were puzzled, Yun Chujio said with a smile, I remember that when I went in, you guys weren't the ones guarding this teleportation array. I know you guys should be taking turns to guard it, right? I don't want to talk to you anymore. I still have something important to tell the sect master. I'll talk to you another day." Hei Shinjio hopped out of the teleportation platform while talking, leaving the dumbfounded disciples behind. The disciples looked at each other, apparently still in a daze. "Brothers, what's going on? Why did that Yun Chujio come out all of a sudden?" "It doesn't matter how she came out. We have to keep the mushroom incident a secret. Otherwise we will be punished by the sect." "That's right. If the higher-ups find out that we went AWOL, they will definitely punish us. We will bite Yun Chujio to death and suddenly appear on the teleportation platform." Hei Shinjio had already expected that the disciples would do this, so she was not worried that there would be a loophole in her story at all. She happily hopped onto Palm Peak. Soon she met many disciples along the way. When they saw Yunchuju, they were all dumbfounded. Could it be that the teleportation array had been fixed? Hei Shinjio silently recorded the people who despised her in her black ledger. It was not too late for little Gio to take revenge. Just wait and see. Hei Shinjio followed the sect's map and finally arrived at the meeting hall halfway up the summit. On the way, this fellow had already heard that Sect Master Huang of Xuanji Sect, who was the closest to the Nameless Sword Sect, was here. No wonder Wan Pengcheng wanted to catch worryless fish. He must have used it to entertain Sect Master Huang. Yun Chujio blinked her eyes. Her ultimate goal was to unite all the powers to deal with the 9 pavilions, so it was not bad to be able to brush her face in front of Sect Master Huang. This fellow's thoughts were pretty good, but unfortunately he was stopped by the disciple on duty at the main entrance of the meeting hall. Stop. You are not allowed to enter the meeting hall without permission. Leave quickly. Yun Chujio was about to explain a few words when she saw Wan Pengcheng and the other two with sweat all over their heads. They ran over in panic. The 3 of them were stunned when they saw Yun Chujio, but they did not say anything. Instead, they said to the disciple on duty, "We have something urgent to report to the sect master. Quickly let us in." The disciple on duty did not let them in immediately. The leading disciple picked up his identity jade token and asked for instructions before letting Wan Pengcheng and the other 2 in. Yun Chujio, this shameless fellow, also followed them in. The disciple on duty quickly chased after them. However, because there were important guests in the meeting hall, they did not dare to make a big fuss. They watched Hei Shinjio follow Wan Pengcheng and the other 2 into the meeting hall. The disciple on duty gritted his teeth in anger. This Yun Chujio was too hateful. He quickly took out his identity jade token and reported it to Elder Gu, who was in charge. Unexpectedly, Elder Gu did not say anything and just told them to ignore it. After Yun Chujio followed Wan Pengcheng and the other 2 into the meeting hall, she could not help but click her tongue. This meeting hall was really grand. The higher-ups of the Nameless Sword Sect were all present, and there were a few people sitting on the guest seats. They must be from the Xuanji Sect. Yun Chujio was secretly sizing them up when she heard Wan Pengcheng and the other 2 say in a trembling voice, reporting to sect leader, worryless fish are all gone. Master Ouyang was initially in a daze when he saw Yun Chujio. When he heard the words of Wan Pengcheng and the other 2, he immediately ignored Yun Chujio and frowned slightly. What did you say? 1 pavilion, 2 islands, and 3 sects had always been competing with each other in the open and in the dark. Therefore, when Sect Master Huang came to visit, Master Ouyang originally wanted to catch a few worryless fish to show off. After all, only the Nameless Sword Sect had worryless fish in this towering sky continent. He didn't expect to hear the news that the worryless fish had disappeared. This time he didn't show off and it was embarrassing. Wan Pengcheng and the other 2 saw that Master Ouyang's expression was unhappy, and their legs went weak as they knelt on the ground. Sect Master, we were ordered to catch worryless fish, but we didn't expect to find no worryless fish at the end of the underground river. We checked carefully, and there were no signs of man-made damage to the 5 protective nets and array formations. We really don't know what caused this. Although Master Ouyang was shocked and angry with outsiders present, he naturally wouldn't flare up. He only glanced at Elder Wan, who wasn't looking too good either. Elder Wan, worryless fish has always been in your charge. Immediately arrange for people to thoroughly investigate this matter. When Eating Melon 9 heard Master Ouyang's words, her heart was practically blooming with joy. She didn't expect that worryless fish was in Elder Wan's charge. She had unintentionally tricked him. It was really great. Sect Master Ouyang glanced at Sect Master Huang and the others from Xuanji Sect, who looked like they were watching a good show. He was very angry. How did this worryless fish suddenly disappear? What the hell? Sect Master Huang took a sip of his tea and said with a faint smile, Sect Master Ouyang, you don't have to take it to heart. This worryless fish was born and bred. Perhaps it feels that the Nameless Sword Sect isn't suitable for it. It's hard to say if it's in another place. Sect Master Ouyang naturally heard that Sect Master Huang was taunting the Nameless Sword Sect and wanted to say a few words against him. However, the reason for the disappearance of the worryless fish had not been found yet, so it was useless to say anything more. just as Sect Master Ouyang was fuming with anger. Sect Master Huang changed the topic. That little girl is Yun Chujio, right? Didn't you say that she was trapped in the cave abode of the nameless patriarch? Isn't this out of the blue? Even if you don't want me to see her, you shouldn't be so perfunctory with me, right? Only then did Sect Master Ouyang remember Yun Chujio's matter. When he saw Yun Chujio's smiling face, Sect Master Ouyang felt his head ache. Ever since Yun Chujio entered the sect, the Nameless Sword sect had never stopped. Putting aside the fact that she had beaten people up and struck the sky-shaking drum, just the fact that half of the sword light in the sword pool was gone was already enough to make people worried. Not only that, the sword pool had been struck by lightning previously. Even the teleportation array in the Nameless Ancestral Master's Grotto had been destroyed by lightning. And now Worryless Fish had also disappeared. Could it be that this little girl was a jinx? Was it all because of her bad luck? When Master Ouyang thought of this, he looked at Yun Chujio with a hint of disdain in his eyes. He thought to himself, since Xuanji sect had designs on her, he might as well ask for some benefits and send this jinx away. He Xinju was so smart. Instantly, from the subtle changes in Master Ouyang's expression, he could guess what he was thinking. He thought to himself, little fellow, I'll make you cry and beg me to stay. After a few thoughts passed through Master Ouyang's mind, he said indifferently, the destruction of the teleportation array is indeed true. I'm also a little puzzled. Yun Chujio, how did you leave the Ancestral Master's cave abode? Yun Chujio blinked her eyes and deliberately glanced at Sect Master Huang. Then she said mysteriously, Sect Master Huang, should I say it now? Pan Din 0ve1 Seep Yun Chujio. She really wanted old man Ouyang to open his old eyes and take a good look. She was the magnificent female emperor of Zephyr, a petty person? Was she blind? This fellow's heart was filled with hatred. Alright, this is what you asked me to say. There are things you will regret. Sect Master, it was Patriarch Nameless who sent me out. Yun Chujio's words instantly stunned everyone. For a moment, the meeting hall was completely silent, as if time had frozen. What did she mean by Patriarch Nameless sending her out? The Nameless Patriarch had passed away tens of thousands of years ago, alright? How could he possibly send her out? Master Ouyang was already very angry about the Worryless Fish matter. Now that he heard Yun Chujio spouting nonsense, he immediately berated her coldly. Nonsense. Why don't you tell me the truth? Yun Chujio said with an innocent expression, it's really like that. Why don't you ask the disciple in charge of repairing the teleportation array? The teleportation array hasn't been repaired up until now. If it wasn't for the Nameless Patriarch's appearance, how could I have come out? Although Master Ouyang still didn't quite believe it, he still had people ask. He didn't expect that the teleportation array hadn't been repaired yet, and Yun Chujio had indeed appeared on the teleportation platform out of thin air. Everyone couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Could it really be that the Nameless Master had appeared? Master Ouyang couldn't help but regret letting Yun Chujio say this matter in front of Sect Master Huang. However, since she had already said it, there was no need to hide it. Moreover, this matter might not be true. Thus, Master Ouyang said with doubt, Yun Chujio, tell me what exactly happened. Master Ouyang, the matter is like this. After I was left alone in the Ancestral Master's cave abode, I couldn't be more miserable. The people of the Discipline Hall didn't leave me a drop of water or a grain of food, and my spiritual power couldn't be used. I almost starved to death. I did summon my spiritual pet earlier. In the face of the dilemma between survival and eating my spiritual pet, I struggled for 3 whole days, but in the end I still couldn't bear to eat it. I was so hungry at that time. When I saw the stones I thought they were ribs, and when I saw the floating clouds I thought they were big steamed buns. I really couldn't believe that I, a dignified disciple of the Nameless Sword sect, would starve to death. When Yun Chujio said this, her face revealed an aggrieved and sad expression. She was just like a little white lotus. Sect Master Huang immediately felt that there were some things that could be done. He immediately looked at Master Ouyang in puzzlement. Master Ouyang, your Nameless Sword sect is too ruthless towards your own disciples. You don't even give them food and drink? Are you trying to starve your disciples to death? Master Ouyang's face alternated between red and white. He had only found out these few days that the Discipline Hall did not leave any food and water for Yun Chujio. He knew that this was most likely Elder Wan's handiwork. However, he felt that Yun Chuju was doomed anyway. There was no need for her to shed all pretense of cordiality with Elder Wan, so he did not flare up. Master Ouyang coughed twice. I will find out what the discipline hall has done to you. Continue. Yun Chujio wiped her tears with her sleeve and sighed. Sigh. Master Ouyang, it's up to you whether you want to find out or not. Anyway, it's not that bad this time. Master Ouyang's expression became even more unsightly. He didn't say anything, but he glared fiercely at Yun Chujio, clearly warning her to stop. Yun Chujio trembled for a moment and continued, forget it, forget it. I'm just a small handyman, naturally I can't compare to some people. Just treat it as my bad luck. However, this could also be considered a stroke of luck. I didn't expect that by a stroke of luck, I actually received the Patriarch's advice. This is simply a blessing in disguise. As Yun Chujio said this, her face revealed a smug expression. She was simply extremely smug. You received the Patriarch's advice? Just you? Aren't you afraid that the wind will blow your tongue out? Wan Pengcheng was already very angry. Seeing that Yun Chujio kept pointing at the mulberry trees and scolding the locust trees, he couldn't bear it anymore and mocked. Yun Chujio glanced at Wan Pengcheng and then said to Master Ouyang, Master Ouyang, since senior brother Wan suspects me, why don't you let me compete with him in swordsmanship? Master Ouyang saw that Yun Chujio had a nose and eyes, so he thought that it would be okay for her to compete with Wan Pengcheng. Whether she had received the advice of the Patriarch, he could see it with his eyesight. Thus Master Ouyang nodded and agreed. However, he allowed the two of them to stop and not to use their spiritual power. Wan Pengcheng had long wanted to seek revenge on Yun Chujio. Back then he had been schemed against by this stinky girl with chili flower. Today he would definitely teach her a lesson. Wan Pengcheng immediately summoned his treasured sword. This cold light sword of his was personally forged by Elder Duanmu of the upper house of the Nameless Sword Sect. A few days ago, Elder Wan had painstakingly asked for it to be given to Wan Pengcheng. Everyone could not help but exclaim in surprise when they saw the sword. With this sword, Wan Pengcheng was like a tiger with wings. Yun Chujio was probably going to lose miserably. Everyone turned their gazes to Yun Chujio. They heard that this Yun Chujio had a large kitchen knife. She wouldn't really use a large kitchen knife to fight, right? At this moment, Yun Chujio took out a tree branch from her storage ring and said lazily to Wan Pengcheng, come on. To deal with someone like you, there's no need for a sword. The tree branch is enough. Everyone, this Yun Chujio was too arrogant. The tree branch was enough? Just wait for your defeat. Wan Pengcheng was so angry that he gritted his teeth. This Yun Chujio was really too infuriating. Immediately, Wan Pengcheng did not say anything and raised the treasured sword in his hand to stab at Yun Chujio. The sword technique he used was the 7-star sword technique, that only the Nameless Sword Sect's inner court disciples could practice. Yun Chujio dodged nimbly and the tree branch in her hand stabbed towards Wan Pengcheng's eyes. Everyone recognized the sword technique that Yun Chujio used. It was the 5-element sword technique that was commonly practiced by outer disciples. Although everyone was surprised that a handyman like Yun Chujio knew the 5-element sword technique, the 5-element sword technique was too flashy and was far inferior to the 7-star sword technique. This Yun Chujio would definitely lose. However, after a few rounds, everyone revealed shocked expressions. Yun Chujio actually had the upper hand. How was this possible? What surprised everyone even more was that not only was Yun Chujio's sword technique inferior to Wan Pengcheng's, but the sword in her hand was only a branch. And the sword in Wan Pengcheng's hand was the cold light sword. What did this mean? This meant that Yun Chujio's sword technique attainment was not just a little bit higher than Wan Pengcheng's. Everyone looked at Yun Chujio's every move and moved carefully. Although all the moves in the 5-element sword technique were the same, what was different about them? Although it was only a slight change, it was just a small change that made the originally flashy 5-element sword technique become fierce. Wan Pengcheng, who was holding the cold light sword with a tree branch, was forced to retreat repeatedly. Pan DN0V1 Wan Pengcheng's forehead was full of cold sweat, and he was both angry and anxious. He had originally thought that he would be able to avenge himself, but who would have thought that Yun Chujio would use a broken tree branch to force him to be unable to parry? If this were to be spread out, he would simply become the laughingstock of everyone. Wan Pengcheng saw the faint smile on Yun Chujio's face again, and he was flustered and exasperated as he circulated his spirit energy. The tip of the cold light sword instantly transformed into dozens of swords, and each of them stabbed towards the fatal spots on Yun Chujia's body. All of this happened in a split second. The place where Yun Chujio and Wan Pengcheng were fighting was near the entrance of the meeting hall. Even the people closest to them didn't have the time to stop them. A thought flashed through Master Ouyang's mind. It's over. Yun Chujio was dead for sure. The move that Wan Pengcheng used wasn't the 7-star sword technique, but the space-shattering sword technique that only true disciples could practice. And this move was the most powerful killing move of the space-shattering sword technique. Meteor. By right, Wan Pengcheng wasn't a true disciple, so he shouldn't know this space-shattering sword technique. Presumably, it was something that Elder Wan taught him in private. Now that he used this move and poured in his spiritual power, Yun Chujio was only at the 9th level of the spirit transformation realm, so there was no way for her to dodge it. He was dead for sure. Elder Wan's expression wasn't too good either. He had privately taught Wan Pengcheng the space-shattering sword technique for him to use to protect his life. He didn't expect that he would actually use it today. It was a small matter for him to be criticized by others. What made him worried was that Wan Pengcheng's spiritual power and sword cultivation were not enough to support him in using the falling star technique. Even if he could kill Yun Chujio, he would suffer a backlash. He was too impulsive. Just when everyone thought that Yun Chujio was doomed to die, a sudden change occurred. The tree branch in Yun Chujio's hand was lifted at an extremely tricky angle. Not only did it break the falling star technique, but everyone was also stunned to see the cold light sword in Wan Pengcheng's hand fly out of his hand. While Wan Pengcheng was still in a daze, the tree branch in Yun Chujio's hand slapped his face several times until the tree branch in her hand was broken. Only then did she throw the remaining half of the tree branch in her hand onto Wan Pengcheng's face. Wan Pengcheng was embarrassed and angry. In addition to the backlash from Starfall, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted on the ground. Yun Chujio curled her lips. You still can't beat me when you're playing tricks. What a waste of food. Elder Wan quickly fed Wan Pengcheng a pill. His gaze was cold as he glanced at Yun Chujio, but he didn't say anything. What could he say? With so many people watching, not only was Wan Pengcheng a waste of food, he was also unreasonable. Even if he said it, he would only be asking for trouble. There would be plenty of time in the future to kill this smelly girl. Master Ouyang and the others looked at Yun Chujio in surprise. At this time they already believed 90% of what Yun Chujio said. Not to mention other things, just the sword technique that broke the falling star was very mysterious. Just a little girl like her couldn't figure it out at all. She must have been taught by an expert. Master Ouyang changed his previous disdain and said in a gentle tone, Yun Chujio, your sword technique has indeed improved a lot. Can you tell me specifically how the patriarch taught you? Master Ouyang, I was thirsty and hungry at that time and directly fainted. My poor little dog also fainted from hunger with me. Just when I thought I was dead, I was awakened by the rumbling thunder. Everyone nodded their heads repeatedly when they heard this. The heavenly thunder indeed happened 3 days after Yun Chujio arrived at the nameless ancestral master's cave abode. All of them stretched their necks to listen to Yun Chujio continue. At that time I opened my eyes weakly. Then I saw many colorful mushrooms growing on the originally empty cliff wall. At that time I was starving to death. I didn't care whether it was poisonous or not. In any case, I ate a few mushrooms at once. My little dog also ate a few mushrooms. Then I saw the nameless ancestral master, but I couldn't see his face clearly. He was holding a tree branch in his hand, and his movements were very slow as he made 3 sword moves. When everyone heard this, they all looked at each other in dismay. What ancestral master appeared? Was this guy poisoned from eating poisonous mushrooms? The so-called ancestral master teaching her sword techniques was just an illusion. Master Ouyang obviously had the same thoughts as everyone else. He coughed twice and said, Then demonstrate the 3 sword techniques that the ancestral master taught you. Yun Chujio didn't hesitate. She immediately took out a tree branch and demonstrated the 3 sword techniques. This fellow was very smart. The 3 sword techniques she demonstrated were all carefully chosen by her. Other than the one that was used to break the falling stars, the other 2 techniques contained the shadow of the moves that Master Ouyang had previously used. This way it would be easier for everyone to connect the dots. As expected, after everyone saw Yun Chujio's 3 sword techniques, They had a rough guess in their hearts. Although these 3 sword techniques were very exquisite, they were very similar to the signature sword technique of the Nameless Sword sect. The Nameless Sword technique. It was most likely that this little girl had imagined them after the competition with Master Ouyang. This wasn't without precedent. For example, some sword techniques were only thought up when one was drunk. It was inevitable that she had created 3 new sword techniques by accident after eating the poisonous mushrooms. However, there was a problem. How did she come out of the nameless ancestral master's cave abode? Yun Chujio, how did you come out of the ancestral master's cave abode? Master Ouyang asked. Sai, don't mention it. Buttface and I ate all the mushrooms that appeared after the thunder last time. We were so hungry that we could only lie on the spot where the teleportation array originally appeared and wait for death. However, I don't know how I was teleported out. The ancestral master must have pitied me for being harmed by a treacherous person at such a young age, so he manifested his spirit and teleported me out. Buttface. The corners of everyone's eyes twitched. What kind of name did Yun Chujio give her spiritual pet? However, according to what she said, it was not impossible. The teleportation array was damaged by the heavenly lightning, so it might not be stable. Coincidentally, when she was lying on it, she accidentally triggered the teleportation array, so she was teleported out. After much discussion, they came to a conclusion based on the truth that Yun Chujio told them. Yun Chujio was poisoned by mushrooms and had hallucinations. In the end, she was lucky enough to activate the teleportation array, therefore she came out unharmed. Everyone did not believe that the ancestral master had appeared. After all, how could the nameless ancestral master suddenly appear after so many years? Moreover, even if he did appear, he should not have chosen this little girl who had just entered the sect for more than a month. Where would they put their face? The crowd asked about the characteristics of the mushroom again. Yun Chujio rambled on without thinking. Naturally, the crowd could not determine the species of the mushroom. They could only wait for the teleportation array to be repaired before going up to take a look. Yun Chujio was not afraid of the crowd looking. Anyway, she said that she had eaten all of it. What could they see? This fellow originally wanted to make up a story about the patriarch showing up to teach her swordsmanship, but after thinking about it, she felt that it was not very safe, so she temporarily changed it to the poisonous mushroom version. Because her spiritual power was currently low, if everyone believed that the patriarch had taught her swordsmanship, it was hard to guarantee that everyone would think that she was hiding it and did not reveal all of her sword moves. At that time, it would be difficult to deal with the crime of possessing a treasure. Seeing that the matter had come to light, Master Ouyang comforted Yun Chujio a few times. The disgust in his heart also faded a little. After all, this little girl was able to think of exquisite sword moves even after eating a poisonous mushroom. She was indeed a good seedling to practice swordsmanship. He should stay and observe her. PN0V1 Comsect Master Huang was in a good mood after watching a good show, so he smiled and said, "There's no need to be so formal. I came here to see the rumored female emperor of Zephyr. Now that I've seen her, she is indeed a smart and good child. It's just a pity. If only you had joined Xuanji sect back then. I wouldn't have let you be a handyman no matter what." Master Ouyang's expression darkened slightly as he stared intently at Yun Chujio, wanting to hear her answer. The little girl smiled and said in a clear voice, "Thank you, Sect Master Huang, for your kindness. Xuanji sect and Nameless Sword sect are both great sects in the Towering Sky continent. It's my honor to be able to become a disciple of any sect. Actually, there's nothing wrong with becoming a servant. Only through suffering can one rise to the top. I'm still young and more suffering will be beneficial to my future growth." Yun Chujio's words immediately stunned everyone. Her words were very smooth and no one could find anything wrong with them. This little girl was really eloquent. No wonder she became the Southern Continent's female emperor of Zephyr in such a short period of time. She was indeed outstanding. Sect Master Huang was stunned for a moment, then he said a few words of encouragement. With his status, he wouldn't make things difficult for a little girl. He was only here to test Master Ouyang's motive for keeping Yun Chujio. Now that he saw that Yun Chujio didn't seem to be having an easy time in the Nameless Sword sect, his original guess was somewhat shaken. He was prepared to let his spies continue to keep an eye on her, and it wouldn't be too late to make a move once he had a clue. Seeing that there was nothing for Yun Chujio here, Master Ouyang waved his hand and said, Yun Chujio, you can leave first. Yun Chujio nodded obediently and left the meeting hall, returning to the Forging Sword Hall number 9. Hall Master Zhuge and the others were very happy to see Yun Chujio back, but Yun Chujio noticed that the 5 of them were a little absent-minded, as if something was on their minds. Before Yun Chujio could ask what had happened, there was a knock on the door. Zhuge Dong opened the door and saw a servant standing outside the door in fear and trepidation. Yun, junior sister Yun, in order to celebrate you clearing your name, our canteen has cooked a few of your favorite dishes for you. Please accept them, the servant said with fear and trepidation. Ever since Yun Chujio was locked up, although the canteen of the lower house did not treat number 9 sword forging hall as harshly as before, they no longer sent them meals. It was always Zhuge Dong who went to fetch the meals every few days. However, the people from the canteen heard that not only did that fiend not die, he even returned alive. What was worse was that they heard that after eating a few poisonous mushrooms, he created 3 mysterious sword techniques and beat Elder Wan's grandson until he vomited blood. Oh God, if she knew that they didn't send food to the number 9 sword forging hall at this stage, she would definitely do something evil. Therefore, a few chefs used their best skills and hurriedly cooked dozens of dishes and had the odd job workers send them over. Yun Chujio had a stomach full of tricks and immediately guessed it. She sneered and said, What? Did your canteen think that I wouldn't be able to come back? Is that why you have been treating our number 9 sword forging hall so slowly? The servant's legs suddenly turned weak and he said with a trembling voice, Junior sister Yun, I'm just a servant. I don't know anything. Fortunately, Zhuge Dong was kind enough to help her explain, Junior sister Yun, although the canteen didn't send us food, they didn't make things difficult for us. You don't have to scare them. Yun Chujio snorted coldly, for the sake of senior brother Dong, I'll spare you. And next time I'll burn down your canteen. Also remember Yun Chujio am very tough. I won't die. Zhuge Bei looked at the back of that handyman and couldn't help but laugh. Junior sister Yun, I really don't understand. Why are they so afraid of you? Yun Chujio shrugged. Who knows? It's probably because I'm good looking. East, west, south and north couldn't help but laugh. Zhuge Dong somewhat understood the thoughts of those people. Those people bullied the weak and feared the strong. However, junior sister Yun was an unafraid person, so those people naturally didn't dare to resist. Anyway, just delivering some food didn't mean anything. Yun Chujio had been craving for food these days. Although she had eaten a few grilled fish before, she was hungry after all this, so she ate lunch with Dong, Nan 11 and Bei. After lunch, Yun Chujio found an opportunity to ask Zhuge Bei in a low voice, Senior brother Bei, what happened? Why do I feel that something is on your mind? Zhuge Bei was someone who could not keep his mouth shut. He lowered his voice and said, Don't mention it. Didn't the sword light in the sword pool decrease by half? That's why the sword pool increased the number of missions for the Forging Sword Hall. The other Forging Sword Hall has more people than us, so they can naturally complete it. Our Forging Sword Hall only has 6 people, how can we complete it? Moreover, this time the people from the sword pool said that if we can't complete the mission, we'll ask the hall master to leave the number 9 sword forging hall with us, and find someone else to take over the number 9 sword forging hall. Leave the number 9 sword forging hall? Then where will you go? Where can we go? Of course, we'll just be ordinary disciples. The 4 of us are easy to deal with, but the hall master is a sword forging master. Letting him leave the sword forging hall is like taking his life. Sigh. Zhuge Bei sighed heavily. Hearing Zhuge Bei's words, Yun Chujio couldn't help but frown. To be honest, she was the cause of all this. If it weren't for the fact that the kitchen knife had secretly eaten half of the sword light, the sword pool wouldn't have thought of such an idea to make things difficult for Hall Master Zhuge. Of course, even if there wasn't the matter of the sword light, the sword pool would still make things difficult for Hall Master Zhuge. The matter of the sword light was just a primer. Even so, Yun Chujio still felt that she had the responsibility to resolve this matter. She did not want to implicate Hall Master Zhuge and the East, West and North because of her. The treatment of a sword forging hall disciple was much better than that of an ordinary outer sect disciple. Although Zhuge Bei said it was easy, he would definitely not be willing to leave. Yun Chujio spoke a few more words with Zhuge Bei, then went to the storeroom to clean the forged treasured swords. As she cleaned the swords, she pondered. If she were to refine pills or talismans, she might be able to help. However, she knew nothing about forging swords, so she couldn't help even if she wanted to. Yun Chujio thought for a moment before putting down the swords in her hands and heading to the front yard. He wanted to see how the forging process went. Unexpectedly, Hall Master Zhuge said with an extremely displeased expression, "Yun Chujio, I said that when the sword forging is done, women can't be present. Have you forgotten? Hurry up and go back to the backyard." Yun Chujio was holding her breath. Originally, she had good intentions and wanted to help, but she didn't expect to be lectured by this stinking rock. She was too lazy to talk nonsense with Hall Master Zhuge, so she returned to the backyard in a huff. Buttface, who had already seen the light, was running wildly in the backyard. When he saw Yun Chujio's angry look, he eagerly approached her and asked what was going on. After hearing Yun Chujio's words, Buttface mysteriously said with his spiritual sense, "Little fairy, I have a good idea. Didn't that stinky rock say that he can't successfully forge the sword because there are women present? Then go to the other sword forging halls and make them unable to successfully forge the sword. Let's see how the sword pool punishes Stinky Rock and the others." Yun Chujio, this Buttface was really bad. However, this was nonsense. She didn't believe that she couldn't succeed with a woman present. However, it was also possible to go to the other sword forging halls and see where the gap was. Therefore, He Xinjiu found an excuse to leave the number 9 sword forging hall and strolled to the number 8 sword forging hall, which was the closest. Pan DN0V1 Yun Chujio straightened her back. "You've heard about my creation of sword moves, haven't you? The sect master has given me special privileges and I can visit all the sword forging halls to increase my inspiration. Why don't you get out of the way?" That disciple had heard about Yun Chujio eating poisonous mushrooms to develop 3 sword moves. After being frightened by Yun Chujio, he subconsciously moved aside. Yun Chujio swaggered into the number 8 sword forging hall. In the middle of the courtyard, there was a blackened furnace that was as black as the number 9 sword forging hall. 8 strong and stocky disciples were swinging special hammers to smash 2 red-hot sword billets. Beside them stood an old man with a goatee, Shan Yonghu. Yun Chujio could not help but blink her eyes. It was just as Zhuge Bei had said. There were a few more people than the number 9 sword forging hall. The production rate was naturally higher than theirs. Shan Yanghe's expression immediately darkened when he saw Yun Chujio. "Who let her in? Don't you know that women are not allowed to be present during sword forging? Hurry up and chase her away." Yun Chujio was both angry and curious. Why did these guys from the nameless sword sect reject women so much when they were forging swords? Was there something wrong with them? Therefore, when the disciple who opened the door for her came to chase her away, she laughed lightly. "Who said that women cannot be present when forging swords? If your sword forging skills are not good, why are you still blaming women? There's really no place to blame." Shan Yonghu was so angry that his beard was raised. He said angrily out of embarrassment, "Outrageous. Really outrageous. A woman is dirty and unclean and the god of swords doesn't like it. Once a woman is present, even if the sword forging is successful, the quality will be very low." Yun Chujio was stunned by Shan Yanghe's words. Shan Yonghu saw Yun Chujio's stunned look and sneered a few times, indicating for his disciples to drag Yun Chujio out. Just as the disciple was about to drag Yun Chujio out, Yun Chujio sneered and said, "A woman is dirty and unclean? Then may I ask who gave birth to the incomparably holy you? Could it be that you were born by a man? When you said that a woman is dirty and unclean, you even scolded your own mother and sisters. You are really as holy as a white lotus." Shan Yanghe's face immediately turned red as he pointed at Yun Chujio and said, You are simply spouting nonsense. This is a rule passed down from ancient times. How can you interfere? Get out of here." Yun Chujio sneered, "I don't want to stay in your dirty place." "Bah! What the hell is this?" After saying that, Yun Chujio turned around and left the number 8 sword forging hall. However, before she left, she blew up the gate of the number 8 sword forging hall. Shan Yonghu and the others were scared silly. Looking at the debris on the ground, Shan Yonghu was almost angered to death. Trembling, he took out his voice transmission talisman and complained to the discipline hall. This Yun Chujio was simply going to rebel. Yun Chujio's heart was very stifled. It was as if there was a ball of burning flames. Even if the gate of the number 8 sword forging hall was blown up, it was still unable to dispel the anger in her heart. What nonsense was this, dirty and unclean? In the end, it was still discrimination against women. Even in a world like Atlas Continent where the strong were respected, there was still contempt for women. Moreover, it was obvious that compared to the southern continent, the northern continent's situation was more serious. In the past few days she had long discovered that although the Nameless Sword sect had quite a number of female disciples, most of them were outer sect disciples or odd job workers. Some of them were even the concubines of the sect's elders. The number 7 sword forging hall also had a few more people than the number 9 sword forging hall. Before she could say anything, the hall master of the number 7 sword forging hall roared and ordered people to kick her out. Get rid of her. Get rid of her. How can you let a woman enter the sword forging hall? What bad luck. Yun Chujio did not waste time talking to him and turned around to leave happily. However, before she left, she also blew up the door of the number 7 sword forging hall. Hei Shinjio did not care how the people of the number 7 sword forging hall scolded her. She turned around and arrived at the number 6 sword forging hall. Soon, except for the number 9 sword forging hall, the 8 doors of the lower house were all blown up by Hei Shinjio. The 8 hall masters of the sword forging hall nearly fainted from anger. They all complained to the discipline hall and demanded that Yun Chujio, the culprit, be punished severely. Manager Song, who was on duty at the discipline hall, felt his head buzz when he heard that Yun Chujio was causing trouble again. The Nameless Sword sect had always been peaceful. Why did something keep happening recently? Moreover, it was all related to that Yun Chujio. This Yun Chujio had just entered the sect when she beat up the servants of the lower house's dining hall. Then she sounded the heaven-shaking drum. In the end, she even expelled Manager Fan and Manager Tion from the sect. Just now, the higher-ups of the sect had ordered the discipline hall to strictly investigate the 2 disciples who escorted Yun Chujio to the Nameless Patriarch's cave abode and the few disciples who were in charge of repairing the teleportation array. He was in a terrible situation. But now, this troublemaker had blown up the gate of the sword forging hall from number 1 to number 8 for no reason. Wasn't this a trick? Manager Song thought for a moment and did not immediately send people to capture Yun Chujio. He planned to go to the sword forging halls to understand the situation first so that Yun Chujio would not backstab him. After understanding the truth of the matter, it was not too late to capture Yun Chujio. On the other side, after Hei Shinjio blew up the 8 gates, she felt that the anger in her heart had dissipated a little. She could not be bothered to return to Sword Forging Hall number 9 because she knew that Hall Master Zhuge must have heard about the commotion. When she went back, she would also be reprimanded by him. A large part of the reason why she was so angry today was because she recalled her previous life. Pan de N0, VE1. After she found this news, she did not continue to investigate further. What was the point of finding such parents? Because of their abandonment, she had been a little beggar since she was young. Every day she had only one task in life, and that was to fill her stomach. She had even fallen to the point of snatching food from dogs. Therefore, when she heard those sword forgers' prejudice and slander towards women today, she could no longer suppress the anger in her heart. So what if she was a woman? Was a woman inferior to others? Yun Chujio walked forward aimlessly. As she walked, her eyes became a little moist. She originally thought that the pain in her heart had been healed by time, but she did not expect that she would still be stimulated by a single sentence and bleed profusely. Perhaps her obsession with her parents had not been resolved. Otherwise, she would not be so persistent in trying to find her biological parents in this body. When Yun Chujio calmed down a little, she realized that she was standing at the door of a courtyard. There was no plaque on the door and there were no disciples guarding it. Yun Chujio took out a map and compared it. She found that the name and purpose of this courtyard were not marked on the map. She could not help but feel curious. She went forward and knocked on the door, but there was no response. Yun Chujio thought about it. It was already late and she did not want to go back and see Hall Master Zhige's ugly face. It was not bad to spend the night in this courtyard. Therefore Yun Chujio pushed open the door of the courtyard. Looking at the situation in the courtyard, Yun Chujio could not help but be stunned. This was also a sword forging hall? The reason why Yun Chujio had such a judgment was that there was a dark weapon forging furnace in the center of the courtyard. It looked exactly the same as the weapon forging furnace of the number 9 sword forging hall. However, there was no earth fire burning underneath. It seemed that no one had used it for many years. Yun Chujio frowned. She was annoyed whenever she saw the furnace. She didn't bother to look at it anymore and went straight to the backyard. The layout of the backyard was similar to the number 9 forging sword hall. Yun Chujio randomly picked a room and cleaned it briefly before lying on the bed. She recalled what happened today and knew that she had vented her anger. Moreover, she was too impulsive and couldn't avoid being punished. But she had done what she had to do. This fellow was really ambitious. After thinking for a while, he fell asleep in a daze. Hei Shinjio fell asleep. The discipline hall master Zhuge and the others were looking for her like crazy. After the discipline hall's manager Song understood what had happened, his heart was like a dog that had been bemoaned. He didn't know if the higher-ups had gone crazy, but they shouldn't have sent a little girl like Yun Chujio to the number 9 sword forging hall. Although there was no explicit rule, everyone knew that the sword forging hall did not accept girls. Wasn't this just looking for trouble? If it had been an ordinary female disciple, it would have been fine. Yun Chujio was not someone to be worried about. Now she had blown up all 8 doors of the sword forging hall and even went missing. It was really troublesome. However, where did this Yun Chujio run off to? Why didn't the identity jade plate respond? Could it be that she fled because she was afraid of punishment? That didn't make sense. There were people guarding the sect gate and Yun Chujio's spiritual power was not high, so how could she escape? Yun Chujio slept until the sun was high in the sky. She stretched lazily, thinking that she was awesome. It had to be said that this guy's self-healing ability was very strong. There was nothing that could not be solved by a good night's sleep. This guy picked up the identity jade token and could not help but feel a little puzzled. Logically speaking, since she had caused such a big incident, the identity jade token should not be so quiet. Could it be that those people were in the wrong so they did not go to the discipline hall to complain? Even if those people did not complain, the north, south, east and west should not have ignored her. Or perhaps her identity jade token was broken. The more Yun Chujio thought about it, the more she felt that this conclusion was reliable. Anyway, her identity jade token was broken and it was not her problem. She could hide here and practice the sword technique she saw on the cliff. Therefore Hei Shinjio ate some simple food. After she left the house, she began to practice the sword technique she saw on the cliff in the courtyard. The more Yun Chujio practiced, the more she felt that this sword technique was really mysterious. Although it was not a complete set of sword technique, this half set of sword technique was enough for her to analyze and study. Once Hei Shinjio became focused, she was even afraid of herself. Because this fellow was obsessed with this sword technique, he had almost forgotten to eat and sleep, not to mention leaving this courtyard. Therefore, for 3 days in a row, the discipline hall searched the entire nameless sword sect, but they still could not find any trace of Yun Chujio. Almost everyone thought that Yun Chujio had fled because she was afraid of punishment. Elder One immediately suggested to Master Ouyang to issue a sect arrest warrant to arrest Yun Chujio in the entire northern continent. Master Ouyang found an excuse but didn't agree. He always felt that that little girl was extraordinarily bold. How could she flee because she was afraid of punishment just because she blew up 8 gates? This was not in line with her style of doing things. However, where did the little girl go? On the other side, Hei Shinjio collapsed on the ground due to the exhaustion of her spiritual energy and physical strength. She mumbled softly, "This sword technique is too mysterious. I'm such a smart person but I've only grasped the tip of it. However, it's also possible that I don't have enough spiritual energy so I can't grasp some of the mysteries. Forget it, I haven't gone out for a few days. Those people are probably going to die of anger. I'd better go out and make a public appearance." Thus Hei Shinjio ate something and went to the front yard. She wanted to open the door to go out, but she found that the door couldn't be opened. Hei Shinjio kicked, knocked and could not open the door. She gritted her teeth, took out the talisman and tried to blast the door open. Unfortunately, she found that the talisman could not be used. She tried to use the sound transmission talisman again, but it could not be used. It turned out that it was not her identity jade plate that was broken, but there was a barrier here. Hei Xinjiu looked at the ridiculously sturdy door and a sad thought arose in her heart. Could it be that she had suffered retribution because she blew up 8 doors? Yun Chujio stretched her neck and shouted a few times, but there was no reaction as expected. However, this guy was a little puzzled. Why didn't the people of the discipline hall search this place? She didn't notice anything unusual when she came in. It was obvious that it was useless to think about this now. It was better to think of a way to get out. Therefore, this fellow took out her omnipotent kitchen knife and prepared to chop down the main door. Unfortunately, before she could do so, the main door had disappeared without a trace. PN0V1 Commune Chujio, fuck. How could he play like this? Just as the guy was still in a daze while holding the large kitchen knife, a few wisps of white mist drifted out from the abandoned crafting furnace and finally transformed into a sloppy old man. However, it was very faint, as if it was going to disappear at any moment. The old man saw Hei Xinjiu frowning and said with disdain, "Why is it a girl? Can the Nameless Sword sect let girls forge swords now? It's really getting worse with each generation. No wonder no one has come in to forge swords for a long time." Yun Chujio was already holding her anger because she could not go out. Now that she heard the old man say this, she was even angrier. What's wrong with a girl? A girl eats your food and drinks your water. Let me out quickly. The old man snorted coldly. Girl, don't be stubborn. Let's not talk about other things. When it comes to forging swords, women are inferior to men. Whether it's beating the sword billet or infusing sword intent, a girl doll can't do either. Moreover, when forging a sword, if there's a girl doll present, the men will be distracted, so the sword forging won't succeed. When Yun Chujio heard the old man's last words, she couldn't help but have a thought. She raised her eyebrows. Old man, why do I listen to your meaning? When forging a sword, strictly forbidding women to be present, isn't it because it's dirty or unclean? Is it because I'm afraid that the men who forge the sword will be distracted? That's right, so when I forge the sword, I forbid women from approaching so as to avoid distracting those little rascals. Right, cut the crap. Hurry up and light the fire to forge the sword. If the forging doesn't succeed, don't go out. However, a girl like you probably won't succeed in forging the sword either. It's not bad for you to stay here and clean. The old man said disdainfully. Yun Chujio blinked her eyes and said, Old man, I don't know how to forge a sword at all, so I can't forge the sky dome sword that you mentioned. Let me out. I'll find someone else to help you forge the sword. The old man snorted and said, Don't lie to me. Let me do some calculations. It seems that no one has come in for a long time. Although you're a girl and your spiritual power is terrible, it's still better than no one. Cut the crap and forge the sword. Hei Xinjiu was about to release Tao Wu and the rest to deal with the elder's remnant soul when the elder sensed something and sniffed. To tell you the truth, the enchantment here is formed by my obsession. You will not be able to get out even if my soul is shattered, unless you forge the firmament sword. Hei Xinjiu did not know if what the old man said was true, but she did not dare to take the risk. If this place was really the result of the old man's obsession, it would be more troublesome for her to kill the old man. The old man's soul did not dissipate, so he could at least give her some advice. If she killed the old man, she would really be blind. Thinking of this, Hei Xinjiu instantly smiled like a flower. Senior, I was just joking. To be able to meet you is simply an honor for 3 lifetimes. The old man's remnant soul was almost scared away by this guy's attitude. Was this little girl crazy? She was swearing just now. How did it become my great honor in such a short time? Senior, if I'm not wrong, you should be the sword forging master of the Nameless Sword sect, right? How should I address you? Which generation are you from? Although the old man could not figure out what Yun Chuju was up to, he still said rather conceitedly, That's right. I am the 5th generation disciple of the Nameless Sword sect. As for my real name, I have long forgotten it. They all call me Jian Feng. Yun Chujio cursed in her heart. Jian Feng? What an image. He was simply a lunatic. However, a 10th generation disciple? She was the 32nd generation disciple of the Nameless Sword sect. This old man was truly a senior. Yun Chujio's heart suddenly jolted. Could this old man know the second half of the sword technique? If she could learn the second half of the sword technique, she wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Thus, this fellow said with a smile, So it's Senior Jian Feng. A few days ago I was practicing the sword technique in the backyard. You've seen it too, right? What do you think? Upon hearing her words, Jian Feng, the contemptuous expression on her face was somewhat restrained. The swordsmanship you're practicing is very mysterious. It's even more mysterious than the Nameless Sword sect's Nameless Sword technique. It seems that the Nameless Sword sect has a rising star. Let me ask you, who improved this swordsmanship? Yun Chujia's heart moved again. It seemed that even the 10th generation disciples had never seen the swordsmanship on the cliff. It seemed that there was a big secret behind this swordsmanship. She could not reveal it anymore or it would backfire. As expected, Jian Feng turned his attention to sword forging and said with disdain, "It's just that no one has come in for many years. Otherwise, I wouldn't be bothered with you, little girl. Just kill her. You have no foundation in sword forging, yet you still dare to enter my sword hut. You really overestimate yourself." Yun Chujio did not argue with Jian Feng. She said with a smile, "I indeed overestimate myself. Otherwise you can just let me go. Why waste your energy?" Jian Feng snorted coldly. "Stop playing tricks on me. If you can't forge the firmament sword, don't even think about going out." Hearing Jian Feng's words, Yun Chujio knew that she could only forge the sword obediently. She said with a bitter face, "Senior Jian Feng, there's no earth fire and no ores here. How can I forge the sword?" Jian Feng looked at her as if she was an idiot. With a wave of her sleeve, the earth fire under the furnace started to burn, and a lot of ores appeared on the ground. "Now let's first burn the ores into refined iron blocks, then proceed to the next step." Yun Chujio did as she was told and threw a few ores into the furnace. Then she bitterly waited for the ores to be burned into refined iron blocks. What Yun Chujio did not know was that the moment the earth fire burned in the sword hut, the Nameless Sword sect exploded. Oh my god! The earth fire switch of the sword hut has actually been activated. This means that someone has entered the sword hut. Tizzy, I wonder who is so courageous. What's the difference between this and courting death? One must know that there is Jian Feng's obsession in the sword hut. It is said that no one has ever come out alive from there. However, it is said that Jian Feng's temper is strange. Many people who enter are immediately slapped to death and thrown out. It seems that the one who entered this time has caught his eye. Could it be that a sword forger has entered? Panda N0V1 Master Ouyang also received the news, but after a thorough investigation he did not find any missing disciples in the end. It was Elder Gu who reminded him, "Master, didn't Yun Chujio go missing for a few days? Could it be that the person in the sword hut is her?" Master Ouyang, all the higher-ups of the sect looked at each other. Didn't they say that Jian Feng did not like the presence of women when she forged her sword? It was said that because the god of swords did not like women, female disciples were strictly forbidden from approaching the weapon refining furnace. It was precisely because of this that the sword forgers of the Nameless Sword sect would not allow women to get close to the furnace over time. Why did he leave that little girl Yun Chujio behind now? Elder Wan's heart was filled with hatred. He originally thought that the little girl had fled in fear of punishment. When the time came he would do something to kill her. He did not expect that she would actually enter the sword hut. However, she would not be able to live long after entering the sword hut. Jian Feng's patience was extremely poor. She would kill the disciples who entered the sword hut at any time. Therefore, even though many sword forgers coveted Jian Feng's sword forgery skills, it had been many years since anyone dared to enter the sword hut again. Elder Wan's conjecture was right. Jian Feng's patience had indeed run out very quickly. He Xinjiu did not have any foundation in sword forgery. After throwing the iron ore into the sword hut, she started to play by herself. Jian Feng was almost angered to death. However, he considered that no one had come in for a long time, and his soul was already very weak. It might dissipate one day, so he decided to bear with it. Finally, under Jian Feng's guidance, He Xinjiu burned the ore into iron. Next she had to hammer the sword billet. The hammer that hammered the sword billet weighed 1,000 pounds. After hammering it a few times, He Xinjiu did not feel like hammering anymore. "Senior Jian Feng, isn't this enough? Look, this is already in the shape of a sword. It's impossible to hammer this thing into flowers, isn't it?" Jian Feng looked at the pancake-like sword billet and almost died from anger. She roared furiously, You better hammer it 1,000 times and stop talking nonsense. Hei Xinjiu shrunk her neck and said embarrassedly, I'll hammer it then. What are you shouting for? 1, 2, 3. Jian Feng calmed down slightly when she saw Yun Chujio starting to hammer the sword billet. However, she almost fainted from anger. A certain Jiu counted like this. 1, 2, 3, 9, 15, 80, 200, 200, 300. You shut up. Can't you even count? Senior Jian Feng, you're right. I really can't count. Why don't I hammer and you count for me? Jian Feng gnashed her teeth in anger and kept muttering in her heart. It was not easy for someone to come in. She had to endure. Therefore, Jian Feng gritted her teeth and counted. Hei Xinjiu began to hammer the sword billet. As he hammered, he complained in his heart, this is not a human's job. Chapter 3785, Puppet number 4. Yun Chujio hammered it for more than 500 times, but she couldn't move it anymore. Normally, this sword billet could only be hammered by 4 male disciples working together. It was already extraordinary for her to be able to hammer it for 500 times. However, this guy's eyes suddenly lit up. Although she couldn't hammer it, the puppet could. Therefore, this guy let out puppet number 4. Greetings, master. Yun Chujio waved her hand and stuffed the hammer into puppet number 4's hand. She pointed at the sword and said, you can beat it 500 more times and turn it into the shape of a sword. Puppet number 4 immediately began to beat it with the same force every time. It was much stronger than Hei Xinjiu's perfunctory look. Yun Chujio sat down on the ground. Damn it, this forging sword was indeed not suitable for a peerless beauty like her. It was better to let those smelly men think that they were the ones forging the sword. Yun Chujio rested for a while and realized that Jian Feng had not said anything for a long time. She looked up and saw Jian Feng staring at puppet number 4 like a fool, as if he was looking at his beloved girl. Yun Chujio's heart tightened. Oh no. She was so focused on saving trouble that she forgot that puppet number 4 could not be exposed to the public. If Jian Feng had the intention to covet her, it would be difficult to deal with him. However, Hei Xinjiu thought about it and realized that Jian Feng was just a remnant soul. She was completely confident that she could kill him. Although this place was formed by his obsession, since the earth fire could burn, it meant that there was a passage to the outside world. She was not afraid of being burned by the fire. At worst, she could just leave through the passage of the earth fire. However, it would be more troublesome after she got out. Moreover, she wanted to learn something about sword forging, so she did not go against Jian Feng. Come and read on our website Wuxiao World site. Thanks. While Hei Xinjiu was thinking, she heard Jian Feng's trembling voice say, Girl, who made this puppet? It has intelligence. Yun Chujio's heart moved, but she did not hide it. She said directly, I made it. It has intelligence because I divided a strand of my spiritual sense and made it into a puppet disc. Jian Feng looked at Yun Chujio in disbelief for a while. Seeing that she did not look like she was lying, he mumbled in a daze, I divided a strand of my spiritual sense and made it into a puppet disc? So that's it. Yun Chujio frowned. It was over. Jian Feng had really become a lunatic this time. Jian Feng was stimulated by something and his figure suddenly disappeared. Yun Chujio shouted for a long time, but Jian Feng did not appear again. Yun Chujio looked at the sword slab that had been beaten neatly by puppet number 4 and felt troubled. She did not know what she should do next. Should she just wait for it to cool down? This guy thought and did the same thing. He did not care about the sword slab, but let puppet number 4 stand guard at the side while she lay on the recliner to rest. She had not slept for 3 days because she had been practicing her swordsmanship. She was very tired just now, so she quickly fell asleep in a daze. After Yun Chujio woke up, she found Jian Feng checking the sword billet that had already been hammered. She eagerly went over and asked, Senior, what do you think of this sword billet? Is it perfect? Jian Feng nodded. Not bad, it is indeed more perfect than hammering with human strength. Next, let's start the filing. After Hei Xinjiu, this lazy girl, learned how to file, she immediately had puppet number 4 imitate her. Jian Feng didn't say anything, but she would give puppet number 4 some pointers from time to time. After several steps, they finally reached the most crucial step of infusing the sword intent. Pan Din 0 Ve1 came next. You try to release all the sword intent and infuse it into the treasure sword. Jian Feng said seriously. Yun Chujio also knew that success or failure depended on this one move. Therefore, she followed Jian Feng's instructions and began to release her sword intent. She also tried to infuse it into the treasure sword. However, it was easier said than done. If infusing sword intent was that simple, the nameless sword sect would not only have a few sword forgers. Yun Chujio tried several times but failed. Jian Feng could not help but shake his head. Could it be that it was the will of heaven? Even if he had found the key to the Skydome sword, he still could not forge it successfully? Yun Chujio's fighting spirit was stimulated. She was not interested in the boring beating of the sword, but she was very interested in this kind of technical thing. Therefore, this guy practiced repeatedly until he was exhausted and then he stopped temporarily. Jian Feng could not help but scold with a smile. You little girl, you are a little lunatic. You can practice the sword for a few days without sleep or rest, and you can also practice until you are exhausted by infusing sword intent. If you are not a little lunatic, then what are you? Yun Chujio also smiled. In some aspects she was indeed similar to this old man. With the two of them smiling, the estrangement between them from before had dissipated a little. It was as if they appreciated each other. He didn't know if Jian Feng had figured out some things, but in the next few days, even if Yun Chujio failed to infuse her sword will, he wasn't angry. Instead, he even had time to give Yun Chujio some pointers on her swordsmanship. Yun Chujio used to be closed door. Now that she had Jian Feng's guidance, she immediately solved many of the doubts that had troubled her. In her heart, she already regarded Jian Feng as half a master. However, Jian Feng's figure was becoming fainter and fainter, as if he would disappear at any time. On this day, Yun Chujio once again failed to infuse her sword intent. Jian Feng comforted her. Don't be discouraged. I believe that with your intelligence you will succeed very soon. You little girl, not only are you nimble and clear, but you also have a resolute personality. You will definitely have a great fortune in the future. Yun Chujio blinked her eyes and said shamelessly, there's no need for that in the future. When I meet you, won't I have a great fortune? Jian Feng was stunned for a moment and then burst into laughter. He laughed and sighed, it's my great fortune to meet a girl like you. Your words reminded me that I haven't been able to successfully refine the firmament sword because I have to add a trace of spiritual sense into it at the same time. When you can infuse sword intent into it, you'll definitely be able to forge the firmament sword. But unfortunately, I can't hold on for long. I'm afraid I won't be able to see the moment when the firmament sword is out of the furnace. Yun Chujio hesitated for a moment before saying, Senior, I have an ancient jade bottle. Why don't you go inside? This way I can at least guarantee that your soul won't dissipate. Jian Feng was stunned for a moment before he bitterly smiled. I appreciate your kind intentions. It's just that my situation is special. My soul is attached to my obsession, that's why it hasn't completely dissipated. I'm afraid that I won't be able to take human form very soon. The moment the obsession disappears, I will completely disappear from this world. Yun Chujio couldn't tell what she felt at that moment. She hadn't been with Jian Feng for long and they were enemies at the beginning. But now hearing him say that, she still felt a bit sad. In the end, Yun Chujio had always been a reckless person. The people she thought were good were always good, and the people she thought were bad she would never like them. For example, Jian Feng in the eyes of most people was a lunatic. However, she felt that this old man was not bad, he had a true personality. Moreover, he had taught her sword forging techniques and swordsmanship. In her heart, she already regarded him as half a master. Naturally, she did not want him to disappear just like that. PN0V1 calm. Although the firmament sword sounds pretty awesome, it's not a godly sword, right? Isn't the ultimate dream of a sword forger to forge a godly sword? Don't you want to forge a godly sword? After hearing Yun Chujio's words, Jian Feng's expression became a little crazy. Godly sword? That's right, the Skydome sword can only be considered as an upper-grade immortal sword at most. I also want to forge a godly sword that is unique. As Jian Feng mumbled, his entire body became more corporeal than before. Yun Chujio did not know if she was happy or worried. Did she dig herself into a hole and bury herself? However, the words had already been said and it had become a fait accompli. It was useless even if she regretted it. Moreover, Jian Feng was also half her master. So what if she was saved? Jian Feng mumbled for a while before his expression recovered a little. When he saw He Xinjiu, he said embarrassedly and guiltily, "Girl, this? It seems that you won't be able to leave for a while. We still need to refine a divine sword after refining the firmament sword." Yun Chujiu sighed. "I still have a lot of things to do. I don't have time to play with you here. I'm leaving now. I'll come back to save you when I find a way to separate your soul from your obsession." Jian Feng looked at He Xinjiu in disbelief. He felt that the little girl must have been driven mad by the stimulation. She was leaving? How? If his obsession did not dissipate, she would not be able to leave this place. Yun Chujiu pointed at the earth fire under the furnace. "I'm leaving through the tunnel of earth fire. Although it's a little troublesome, it's still better than letting you die. After all, there's only one Jian Feng in this world." Jian Feng did not care about the gratitude in his heart. He looked at Yun Chujiu worriedly. "Little girl, are you feverish or stupid? This earth fire is different from ordinary fire. How could you leave through the tunnel of earth fire?" "Zai. This is all my fault. I shouldn't have said anything to you about dissipating. Otherwise, you wouldn't have said anything about the divine sword. Don't be anxious. Let's think of another way. We might be able to successfully forge it." Jian Feng did not believe what she said. How could the divine sword be so easy to forge? He was just trying to comfort Yun Chujiu. Yun Chujiu glanced at Jian Feng, then reached out her hand toward the burning earth fire. Jian Feng cried out in fear, "Stop! Stop! Are you crazy?" However, in the next moment he was stunned. He saw that the little girl's white jade-like hand was not damaged at all, and she even waved her hand proudly in the earth fire. How was this possible? Fire-repelling pearl? You have a fire-repelling pearl? Jian Feng suddenly reacted and exclaimed. Yun Chujiu nodded. Firstly, she did have a good impression of Jian Feng. Secondly, she had enough confidence to kill Jian Feng. Therefore, she was not afraid of Jian Feng killing people and stealing treasures. However, Jian Feng's face showed a pleasantly surprised expression. "That's great. Then you can leave this place safely. A little child like you really shouldn't waste time with me here. Since that's the case, you can leave now." Yun Chujiu shook her head. "I can't leave now. I'll leave at night. Otherwise, I won't be able to get out of here." In fact, this guy was very uncertain. If he left through the tunnel of earth fire, wouldn't it be too flashy? After a while, He Xinjiu changed her mind and decided to leave immediately. Jian Feng was confused. "Didn't you say that it would be easier to leave at night? Why are you leaving now?" Yun Chujiu blinked her eyes and explained her thoughts. She originally planned to leave through the entrance of the earth fire main pipeline, which would be more convenient at night. However, when she thought about it just now, there were too many unpredictable factors to leave through the entrance of the main pipeline. It would be best if she could leave through the exit of the number 9 Forging Sword Hall. That way, she could appear in her dormitory without anyone noticing. Then there was a problem. How could she know which of the many pipelines led to the number 9 Forging Sword Hall? The only way was to try it one by one. He would hide in every exit of the earth fire and listen to the voices outside. Eventually, he would find the pipes of the number 9 Sword Forging Hall. Therefore, he could only choose daytime because there were very few people talking at night. He could not determine which sword forging hall or alchemy room it was. Jian Feng felt that what Yun Chujiu said made sense, so he nodded. However, he was reluctant to part with her. Whether he was alive or dead, he was only focused on the sword forging. He did not expect to have another connection now. Yun Chujiu comforted him. It's okay, it's okay. If this trip is successful, I will come in to see you every once in a while." Although Jian Feng knew that Yun Chujiu was comforting him, he also had some thoughts in his heart, and the sadness in his heart could not help but fade a little. Yun Chujiu asked puppet number 4 and puppet number 5 to move the furnace away. Indeed, there was an earth fire pipeline under it, and it was just enough to accommodate one person. Yun Chujiu waved her claws at Jian Feng and then entered the earth fire tunnel. Although Yun Chujiu was not afraid of the earth fire, she had to bend down and walk forward in the tunnel, which exhausted her. After trying more than a dozen exits, she finally found the exit of number 9 Forging Sword Hall. However, she estimated the time. It was only evening now, so she needed to wait for another 4 hours. Outside, Hall Master Zhuge and the east, west, south and north were forging swords. Zhuge Bei said in puzzlement. Why do I feel that the earth fire today is a little strange? Why is the flame jumping? It seems to be unstable. Zhuge Dong frowned. Perhaps the quality of the earth fire purchased in this batch isn't too good. If you turn the switch a little bigger, there shouldn't be any problems. The two of them did not know that the earth fire was unstable because a certain geo was in the middle of the pipeline. Naturally, the earth fire output was weak and unstable. The speaker did not mean what he said, but the listener was interested. He Xingjiu remembered that the other 8 sword forging halls had given a lot of help to number 9 sword forging hall in the past. Moreover, if number 9 sword forging hall was the only one who did not complete the mission this time, number 9 sword forging hall would definitely be punished. However, if the other 8 forging sword halls also failed to complete the mission, then they would naturally not only punish the number 9 forging sword hall. When He Xingjiu thought of this, bad water rose up. This guy had already found the pattern of these underground fire pipes after wandering around just now, so he knew that the few pipes near the number 9 forging sword hall were the pipes of the lower house forging sword hall. This guy shamelessly placed a pile of stones not far from the exit of the pipes in the other 8 forging halls. Although the underground fire could burn the stones into ashes sooner or later, it still needed time, right? It was enough to slow down the progress of those 8 forging sword halls. By the time He Xingjiu finished her evil deed, it was already the second half of the night. This fellow pricked up his ears to listen. Other than the sound of iron being calcined in the furnace, there was no other sound outside. Yun Chujio knew that because there was no strict time limit for refining iron ore, and there was no need for anyone to watch from the side, the forging sword hall would usually use the night to refine iron ore. Yun Chujio deliberately made a slight noise, but there was still nothing unusual. Only then did she carefully climb out of the earth fire pipe. Yun Chujio put the furnace back into place and then quietly returned to her room. Hallmaster, good morning, by 4 senior brothers. The rice bowl in Zhuge Bai's hand fell to the ground and he rubbed his eyes. Junior sister Yun? Didn't you run away because you were afraid of punishment? Yun Chujio glared at him. I didn't do anything bad, why would I run away? I've been cultivating in the room, alright. Cultivating in the room? Hallmaster Zhuge and the others looked at each other. They had looked for many places, but they really hadn't gone to Yun Chujio's room because they had watched Yun Chujio go out and never come back. They would never have thought that she was in their own courtyard. Zhuge Dong frowned. Junior sister Yun, since you're in your own room, why didn't you say anything when we called you? Yun Chujio spread out her hands. I'm at a critical juncture in my cultivation, so I can't be distracted. Otherwise, it would be easy for me to go mad. I'm sorry. Besides, I thought you guys would come into the room to look for me. Who would have thought that you guys didn't come into the room? Hallmaster Zhuge and the others took a look. Was this the legendary darkness under the lamp? The most conspicuous place was the easiest to overlook. However, this also explained why the disciples guarding the mountain gate did not see Yun Chujio escape. It was because she did not escape from the sect at all. That's not right, junior sister Yun. Didn't they say that you entered the sword hut? Zhuge 11 asked in puzzlement. Sword hut? What kind of place is the sword hut? I only know of the sword pool and the sword hall. Does our nameless sword sect still have a sword hut? Yun Chujio had a puzzled look. Hallmaster Zhuge did not have any doubts, because he originally felt that it was impossible for Jianfeng to keep Yun Chujio. After all, Jianfeng was famous for not liking women, so how could he possibly keep Yun Chujio? The reason why the earth fire in the sword hut was activated was probably because Jianfeng was playing tricks again. It was not because someone had entered. Under He Xingjiu's superb lying skills, Hallmaster Zhuge and the other 3 finally confirmed that Yun Chujio had been cultivating in seclusion in her own room these days. Just as Hallmaster Zhuge was about to say something, Yun Chujio raised her eyebrows and said, Hallmaster, I know what you want to say. Don't worry, I'll go to the discipline hall after breakfast and turn myself in. If I blow up someone's door, I'll compensate them according to the price. No matter how the sect deals with me, I'll obediently accept it. I won't say a word. Hallmaster Zhuge's stomach was full of words, and he was instantly rendered speechless by He Xingjiu. Sure enough, after He Xingjiu had her breakfast, she swaggered out of the number 9 sword forging hall and turned herself into the discipline hall. Hall Master Zhuge hesitated for a moment. In the end he asked Zhuge Dong to accompany Yun Chujio. If there was anything he would report it to him. The moment He Xinjiu appeared, the nameless sword sect exploded. Wasn't this the Yun Chujio who blew up the 8 gates? Wasn't this the Yun Chujio who had already fled in fear of punishment? Wasn't this the Yun Chujio who was rumored to have entered the sword hut? Yun Chujio was delighted to discover that her reputation in the nameless sword sect seemed to have grown. It seemed that there was no one who did not know her. This fellow greeted everyone as he walked. It did not seem like he was going to turn himself in. Instead it seemed like he was inspecting his work. Very soon many people gathered behind Yun Chujio. Naturally they were all prepared to watch the show. They were extremely curious about where Yun Chujio had been hiding for the past few days. Why had she suddenly appeared? Very soon the news of Yun Chujio's appearance reached the ears of the sect's higher-ups. Everyone's faces were filled with astonishment. What? Yun Chujio wasn't in the sword hut? And she didn't flee in fear of punishment? She actually turned herself in? Although Master Ouyang really wanted to go to the discipline hall to see what was going on, he had to maintain his identity. Naturally, it wasn't good for him to personally ask about the matter of a small handyman. He could only wait for the final result. Manager Song of the discipline hall felt that his right eyelid was twitching non-stop early in the morning. He felt uneasy as if something was going to happen. Just as he was feeling uneasy, his disciples rushed over to report, Manager Song, that Yun Chujio has come to surrender. Manager Song was also quite surprised. He hurried to the square of the discipline hall. Little Dong Dong, isn't it boring for you to stay here all day? Little Dong Dong, if you're really bored, why don't you carry me and walk around the nameless sword sect? Little Dong Dong, haven't you and Cece played together before? Follow me and I guarantee that you will live to a new height. The corner of Manager Song's eyes twitched violently. What the hell were Little Dong and Cece? Besides, these two Heichi were made of stone and didn't have any intelligence. Wasn't she talking to a cow? Manager Song picked up the startled wood on the table and patted it. He Xinjiu acted as if she didn't hear him and continued to flirt with the Heichi. Manager Song had to stretch his neck and shout, Yun Chujio, didn't you come to surrender yourself? What are you waiting for? Come here quickly. Yun Chujio then jumped up and touched the ears of the Heichi. Then she swaggered to the front of Manager Song. Manager Song, you don't have to interrogate me anymore. I'll confess everything. I blew up the doors of the sword forging hall from number 1 to number 8. Yun Chujio said as if she was doing everything by herself. Manager Song was a little surprised. He thought that Yun Chujio would give him a talk, but he didn't expect her to confess voluntarily. Since you confessed voluntarily, then I'll deal with you according to the rules of the sect. You destroyed the property of the sect for no reason, and you hid your whereabouts to avoid punishment. It's very bad. Therefore, in addition to compensating for the loss of the 8 gates, you'll also have to pay a fine of 1 million high-grade spirit stones, and you'll also be locked in the bitter cold cave for 3 months. Do you have any objections? No objections. Manager Song, you've indeed dealt with matters fairly. I admit my punishment. Yun Chujio said obediently. Manager Song was practically looking at Yun Chujio with a whole new level of respect. He originally thought that this troublemaker would stir up trouble, but he didn't expect that she would confess her crimes so smoothly, and she didn't have any objection to the punishment at all. It seemed that he had misunderstood her before. This little girl was just a little playful in the end. In fact, she wasn't as cunning and mischievous as the rumors said. Not to mention Manager Song. Even Zhuge Dong felt that there was something wrong with his ear. Was this still the junior sister Yun he knew? Not to mention other things, she actually admitted to a penalty of 1 million upper-grade spirit stones. This fellow was so stingy that he even wanted to take advantage of a green onion in the canteen, okay? How could he admit to the penalty so obediently? However, Zhuge Dong saw that Yun Chujio was really going to sign on the punishment document. Could it be that junior sister Yun had changed her personality because she had been in seclusion for a few days? Just when Yun Chujio was about to sign on the punishment document, someone in the crowd exclaimed, "Oh my God! What's going on? Why are the ears of the Xieji bleeding?" Oh my god, it's true. What's going on? These two stone sièges have been here for tens of thousands of years, and this is the first time such a situation has happened. Does it mean that there is an unjust case? It is said that this heichi is clearly right and wrong, and that is why it is placed here. This ear is bleeding all of a sudden. I'm afraid there is a reason for it. Manager Song's head buzzed. The matter of Heichi's ear bleeding could be big or small. To say it was just an accident, but to say it was big, it meant that he could not distinguish between right and wrong. If he randomly solved the case, his future in the Nameless Sword sect would be ruined. No wonder his right eye kept twitching in the morning. It turned out that something really bad had happened. Manager Song suddenly widened his eyes. Previously, Yun Chujio had been flirting with Xieji. At the end, when she left, she seemed to jump up and touch Sichi's ear. Could it be her doing? But under the watchful eyes of everyone, she did not do anything. She only touched Sichi's ear. Was it just a coincidence? Just when Manager Song was in a daze. He heard Yun Chujio sigh faintly. Sigh. I was going to turn this into a small matter. It's fine if I can bear with this matter. I didn't expect Xieji to be unable to bear with it. I can only tell the truth. The onlookers thought that there would be no more excitement today and that it would be a downer. Now that they saw that not only Xieji's ear was bleeding, but Yun Chujio also said that there was a secret, they immediately widened their eyes and listened attentively. Although Manager Song was very suspicious, he could not stop Yun Chujio from speaking, so he could only acquiesce. Everyone think about it. I am not a lunatic or a fool. Why would I blow up the gate of the sword forging hall number 1 to number 8? Besides, there are no worries in the distant days and there are no grudges in the recent days. Why would I offend them for no reason? Everyone could not help but nod their heads. They were also very puzzled. This Yun Chujio seemed to be quite smart. Why did she blow up 8 gates for no reason? Yun Chujio spread her hands. My greatest strength and greatest weakness is that I'm too kind. I feel that it's a great fortune for me to be able to join the Nameless Sword sect. That's why I always think of contributing to our Nameless Sword sect. You should have heard that when I was in the Nameless Ancestral Master's cave abode, I had received guidance from the Ancestral Master. I've always kept this matter in mind. When I went to Forging Hall number 8 that day, Martial Uncle Yang kept shouting at me about how women shouldn't get close to the furnace. I immediately thought of the Grandmaster's words. Isn't this just being rigid and conformist? Yun Chujio paused at this point and observed the expressions of the crowd without batting an eyelid. She saw that many people did not think much of this. This fellow thought to herself, it seems that this patriarchal culture cannot be changed in a short period of time. It would be better for her to change her concept secretly, otherwise she would be easily rejected. And so, she sighed and continued, perhaps you don't understand what I mean. The point I'm talking about isn't to prevent women from getting close to the furnace, but rather the sword forging techniques of our Nameless Sword sect's sword forgers have always been passed down to our own disciples. The consequence of doing so is that we won't be able to forge enough precious swords to supply the sword pool. Pan DN0V1 What who would believe me if I little Yen Wei said it out loud. With no other choice I came up with the idea of blowing up the door. I wanted the sword forging hall to open its doors and accept new disciples so that those sword forgers could open their hearts and teach more disciples. This way the sword light in the sword pool can be restored as soon as possible, and our Nameless Sword sect will prosper. Originally, I had planned to say these words that day, but the spiritual energy in my body suddenly fluctuated, so I had no choice but to return to my dormitory to cultivate in seclusion. That's why I showed up today. Forget it, I also know that my status is low, so no one will believe me even if I say these words. It's better to punish me. However, the patriarch once said that if the sword forging hall doesn't improve, he will still warn me. I don't know if he is trying to scare me. The crowd instantly exploded. One by one they whispered and discussed animatedly. Many outer sect disciples had long been eyeing the sword forging technique with covetous eyes, and they were eager for the sect to teach them in public. Even if they could not become sword forging masters, they would still be treated much better as helpers than ordinary outer disciples. Naturally, they agreed with Hei Xinjia's words. Therefore they argued, yes, junior sister Yun is right. The sword forging hall should open its doors and accept new members. If more people learn the sword forging arts, it will be a good thing for the anonymous sword sect. Now that you mention it, half of the sword auras were missing a few days ago for no reason. Maybe it was a warning from the founder. Junior sister Yun is too kind. She would rather be punished to remind the sword forging hall to open its doors and accept new disciples. She is really our role model. No wonder Zichi's ears were bleeding. It turns out that she knows junior sister Yun was wronged. Yes, I used to speak ill of junior sister Yun in private. I am simply too inhuman. From now on, I am junior sister Yun's most staunch supporter. Manager Song. Junior sister Yun is innocent. We request for junior sister Yun's release. Manager Song suddenly felt as if he had fallen into a pit. He felt that all of this was planned by this little girl in front of him. What kind of clever confession was this? It was all her way of showing off. The matter of the sword forging technique had always been debated within the sect. He did not know if this matter would be an opportunity. He himself hoped that the more disciples who knew the sword forging technique, the better. In that case, the sword light in the sword pool would recover as soon as possible, which would be a good thing for the cultivation of all the disciples. However, he also knew that most sword forging masters would definitely not agree to this matter. This was because the rarer something was, the more valuable it was. If there were more sword forging masters, their status would naturally be difficult to maintain. This was especially so for the sword forging masters of the lower house. Their sword forging skills were average and they were also the most vulnerable. They would definitely have objections. Just as Manager Song was in a daze, there was a commotion in the crowd. Manager Song looked up and saw the hall masters of the number 1 to number 8 sword forging hall. He thought to himself, the plaintiff is here. I'm afraid this matter cannot be resolved. The hall masters of the number 1 to number 8 sword forging hall heard that Yun Chujio had appeared, so they hurried over. Their purpose of coming here was naturally the same, and that was to punish Yun Chujio severely. This concerned the dignity of the sword forging hall. If Yun Chujio's punishment was not painful or itchy, then no one would take the sword forging hall seriously in the future. However, they came a little late after dealing with the matters at hand, but they still heard what Yun Chujio said later. All of them were so angry that their faces turned ashen. The thing that they hated the most in their lives was the public teaching of sword forging techniques. This was simply a threat to their status. Hall Master Yang of Sword Forging Hall number 8, Shan Yanghu, was so angry that his goatee was raised. He squeezed to the front, he pointed at Yun Chujio and said, "Nonsense. This is simply nonsense. Sword forging techniques are the foundation of our nameless sword sect. How can we casually teach them?" Yun Chujio spread out her hands. "I'm just passing on the patriarch's meaning, you don't have to target me. Besides, what you said isn't right either. The foundation of our nameless sword sect is sword arts, and the sword forging technique is just a support. After all, without superb sword arts, what's the use of forging 10,000 swords? PN0V1 that's right. Does a little girl really think highly of herself? Let me tell you, our northern continent isn't like your southern continent. You little girl can be the female emperor of magnificence. In the northern continent, men are respected. You'd better confess honestly." Hall Master Lu from number 2 Sword Forging Hall said disdainfully. Yun Chujio narrowed her eyes, she still had a faint smile on her face. I told you I'm just a messenger. Anyway, the patriarch said that if you are stubborn there will be a warning. We'll see when the time comes." The onlookers were all hoping that the sword forging art would be made public, so they naturally spoke up for Yun Chujio. Therefore they all shouted, "Didn't the sword hut make some movements in the past few days? Maybe it's the patriarch's warning." "What you said makes sense. First, the sword light in the sword pool was reduced by half, and then it was struck by lightning. These few days the sword hut was reactivated again. Could all of this be a coincidence? It must be the forefathers' warning. They are all disciples of our nameless sword sect, but the gap between people is too big." Junior sister Yun reminded everyone for the sake of the sect's safety, and some people lied for their own benefit. It's really disgraceful. The hall masters of the sword forging hall from number 1 to number 8 were so angry that they were about to vomit blood. They were really sitting at home and trouble came from the sky. First the gate was blown up and now it became the target of the disciples' crusade. Who did they offend? Hall Master Luo of the Sword Forging Hall No. 1's eyes flashed, and he said to Yun Chujio, since you said that the Patriarch will warn us, then well wait and see. If there is really a warning then so be it. If there is no warning then it is just your lies that confuse the masses. We will definitely ask the sect master to punish you severely and expel you from the sect. Yun Chujio laughed bitterly. Did you all see that? I told you that I should have just admitted my punishment. Now you want to expel me from the sect just because of a disagreement? I'm really unlucky. The bystanders were filled with righteous indignation. Wasn't this obvious bullying? Junior sister Yun didn't say anything. She only conveyed the patriarch's intention. How did it become a bewitching rumor? Besides, what did junior sister Yun want? Wasn't it still for the sect's sake? Why did she want to expel her from the sect? Hall Master Luo was obviously more composed than the other 7. Most of the disciples present were outer disciples of the lower house. They couldn't cause any trouble at all. Moreover, the sword forgers in the sect would basically not agree to the matter of the sword forging technique being made public. When that time came, a few sword forgers would help speak up in front of sect master Ouyang, and this Yun Chujio would definitely be expelled from the sect. Just as Hall Master Luo was feeling pleased with himself. He heard Yun Chujio sigh faintly. Alright, since it has already come to this point I can't refuse. Then let's see if the Patriarch will send a warning. I believe that the Patriarch will not play a trick on me. There will definitely be a warning and it will definitely be related to the sword forging hall. Hall Master Luo and the others sneered. This Yun Chujio was really daring. They really wanted to see what the so-called warning was. Zhuge Dong was about to cry. How could this junior sister Yun always turn a small punishment into a disaster? Originally she would receive some punishment and then go to the bitter cold cave for 3 months. This matter would be over, but she just had to say something about the sword forging technique being made public. Wasn't this just looking for trouble for herself? He didn't have any objections to this. Moreover, Hall Master Zhuge had also said in private that the sect should let more disciples with foundations learn the sword forging technique. This would be beneficial to the development of the sword forging technique. However, the vast majority of sword forging masters would not think so. Regardless of whether they succeeded or not, there would probably be more people who would resent junior sister Yun in their hearts. Moreover, what kind of ancestral master's teachings? Wasn't she just poisoned by a poisonous mushroom? Why would there be any warning? Zhuge Dong sighed non-stop. He had already informed Hall Master Zhuge of the news previously. However, he felt that there was no point in informing or not informing. Every time junior sister Yun got into trouble, it was not something that Hall Master could solve. Hall Master Yang rolled his eyes. Yun Chujio, there should be a time limit, right? How about 3 days? If nothing unusual happens within 3 days, we can go directly to the sect leader. 3 days? That's too long. Let's make it 6 hours. However, in order to prevent you and your disciples from concealing it, you can't use your identity jade token or voice transmission talisman. Don't tell me you don't dare to agree? Yun Chujio said indifferently. Hall Master Yang and the others were naturally eager for it. They sneered and said, why wouldn't we dare? Well, agree to it. Zhuge Dong sat on the ground. It was over. Junior sister Yun seemed to have gone into closed-door cultivation stupidly. If she could still think of a solution in 3 days, what could she do in 6 hours? Wasn't she courting death? At this time Hall Master Zhuge squeezed out from the crowd. Just as he was about to help Yun Chujio plead, Hall Master Yang said with disdain, I say, where did this Yun Chujio have the guts to blow up the gates of our 8 sword forging halls? Turns out that you, Zhuge Zhongyuan, are the mastermind behind this. TSK, I heard that if you guys don't complete the mission this month, you will be kicked out of number 9 sword forging hall. So you instructed Yun Chujio to come here to divert our attention. You are really sinister. Chapter 3795 Hall Master Zhu of the number 7 Forging Hall also echoed with a fake smile. That's right, some people just refuse to accept reality, and even think that they are the Hall Master Zhuge from the past. Unfortunately, Now they have to resort to such a low-class method to protect the position of the hall master of the lower house's sword-forging hall. It really makes people feel a little emotional. The other hall masters also followed suit and ridiculed Hall Master Zhuge. Hall Master Zhige's thin and weak body was trembling in anger, but he was so angry that he could not speak. He just clenched his fists tightly. He Xingjiu could not stand to see the person she was protecting being bullied the most. Her small face darkened immediately. Some people have dirty hearts, but they think others are the same. How shameless. Stupid girl, say another word. Manager Song, you heard it too. This Yun Chujio publicly insulted the senior of the sect. According to the sect rules, shouldn't she be punished? Hall Master Zhu said angrily out of embarrassment. Yun Chujio spread her hands. Hall Master Zhu, I was talking about some people, not you. Why did you come to pick up the scolding yourself? Do you think that the characteristics I said are quite compatible with you? So you bravely came to pick up the scolding? Yun Chujio's words immediately made the disciples who were eating melon seeds burst into laughter. This Yun Chujio's words were really interesting and there was nothing wrong with what she said. That's right, she didn't mention her name, but this Hall Master Zhu was stupid enough to go up and pick up the scolding. So stupid. Hall Master Zhu was so angry that he gnashed his teeth. Just as he was about to say something, Hall Master Luo stopped him. Hall Master Zhu, why do you have to argue with a little girl? When the 6 hours are up, there will naturally be some reasoning. Hall Master Zhu thought that it made sense. This stinky girl had a sharp tongue. You wouldn't be able to gain any advantage by arguing with her. In any case, when the 6 hours were up, this stinky girl would be expelled from the sect. There was no need for him to fight with her. Thus, Hall Master Zhu glared at Yun Chujio fiercely and didn't say anything. Hall Master Zhuge originally wanted to help Yun Chujio plead for mercy, but now he could only sigh deeply. In his heart, he thought that this little girl was really not well behaved. Why would she cause trouble every few days? Moreover, she specially picks trouble from the sky to provoke. She really knows how to be evil. Come and read on our website Wuxiao World site. Thanks, time flew by quickly. Soon nearly 2 hours had passed. Nothing had happened, and he had not heard of any abnormal situation in the sword forging hall. Hall Master Zhu and the others could not help but become even more complacent. A little girl still wanted to fight with them. She really overestimated herself. Hall Master Zhuge and Zhuge Dong looked very worried. On the other hand, Yun Chujio was leisurely chatting with the Xieji in the east. Little Dong Dong, thank you for helping me to seek justice. I knew you were the most fair and righteous beast. Little Dong Dong, do you think some people are so stupid? How can the patriarch's words be false? Tiskade, in a while someone will regret it. Little Dong Dong, guess what kind of warning the patriarch will give? It can't be that he will make those 8 hall masters become women, right? Puchi. Everyone was tickled by Yun Chujio's words. This Yun Chuji was really a clown. Speaking of which, they really didn't want her to be expelled from the sect. Other things aside, ever since this Yun Chujio entered the sect, their dull sect life had become a lot more fun. At this moment, Hall Master Yang's identity jade token started to tremble. As he had said at first, Hall Master Yang could only ignore it, thinking that it was probably unimportant news. However, very soon Hall Master Zhu and the others' identity jade tokens also started to tremble, and the voice transmission talisman in the storage ring also started to tremble non-stop. Hall Master Yang and the others, who were initially relaxed and proud, suddenly became a little bewildered. Why were their identity jade tokens and voice transmission talismans ringing at the same time? Could it be that something had happened in the sword forging hall? Although Hall Master Yang and the others wanted to know what exactly had happened right away, they had to console themselves first. It must be a coincidence, it must be a coincidence. Nothing would happen to the sword forging hall. Nothing would happen. A certain Jiao who was chatting with Xieji saw the situation and strolled over leisurely. Are you guys not confident now? I think it's most likely that the patriarch has sent a warning. Now you don't have to say that I'm misleading people, right? Hall Master Yang snorted. It's just a coincidence. Don't be complacent. It's going to be 6 hours soon. Just wait to be expelled from the sect. Yun Chuju just chuckled and didn't argue. She just looked at the entrance of the square calmly. The disciples were all very excited. It seemed that something really happened. It seemed that what Yun Chujio said was true. But how would the patriarch warn them? While everyone was discussing, a disciple rushed over. Someone recognized that person and exclaimed, "He's Lin Jun from the number 8 sword forging hall." Did something happen to the number 8 sword forging hall? Hall Master Yang's heart was in his throat. Just as he was about to stop Lin Jun from speaking, he saw Yun Chujio asking with a worried expression, "What happened to the number 8 sword forging hall? Senior brother, did something happen to the number 8 sword forging hall? Hurry up and say it so that everyone can help give advice." "Hall Master Yang, don't you think so?" Hall Master Yang was about to stop her, but he could only swallow his words. He squeezed out 2 words from between his teeth, "Say it." Lin Jun felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. Didn't Hall Master say that he was going to severely punish Yun Chujio? Why did he see that Yun Chujio was alive and kicking, but the Hall Master's expression was so ugly instead? However, due to the urgency of the matter, Lin Jun did not have the time to think too much. He said anxiously, "Hall Master, there's a problem with the earth fire. After breakfast, we originally planned to take out the iron block that was forged last night. We did not expect that only half of the ore inside had been refined. After some investigation, we found that even if we turn the earth fire switch to the maximum, the flame of the earth fire is only 1/10 of its original size. Moreover, the flame is very unstable and there's no way to forge a sword." Lin Jun's words immediately caused the crowd to explode. "Look, Yun Chujio is right. Isn't this a warning?" "That's right, the earth fire has always been very stable. How could there be a problem for no reason? Moreover, it happened at this time. Obviously, it's a warning from the patriarch." "That's right. If it were anything else, it could be that someone deliberately played tricks. However, this earth fire is different from other things. Only those who are desperate would dare to have ideas about the earth fire." Pan DN0V1 Lin Jun was confused. What warning from the patriarch? What on earth had happened? Hall Master Yang's expression was very complicated. He was worried and angry. In short, it didn't look good. He said with a fierce expression, "It's just a sudden incident. Moreover, it's only our number 8 forging sword hall that has a problem with the earth fire. The other forging sword halls are doing as usual. It's not a warning at all." Hall Master Zhu echoed from the side, "That's right. It's just a coincidence. A problem of the forging sword hall doesn't mean anything unless all 8 of us have a problem." As soon as Hall Master Zhu finished his sentence, a few disciples rushed over. They were all disciples of the sword forging hall. "Hall Master, there's a problem with the earth fire. Hall Master, it's not good. For some reason the earth fire has become very weak. Not to mention the sword forging hall, even the iron ore cannot be refined. Hall Master, something big has happened. The earth fire is flickering. It seems to be going out." The disciples of the sword forging hall all reported in fear. The content was basically the same. There was something wrong with the earth fire. Hall Master Zhu and the others' expressions were very interesting. Even if they were unwilling to admit it, they had no excuse at this time. This was because other than the forefathers' warning, they really could not explain why the earth fire of the 8 sword forging halls had gone out of control. Yun Chujio smiled faintly. "This question is very easy to prove. Manager Song, you're the most impartial. Why don't you ask if there's any problem with the earth flames in the pill refining room?" If there's no problem with the earth flames in the pill refining room, then Hall Master Luo has nothing to say, right? Seeing Yun Chujio's smile, Hall Master Luo felt a little flustered. He had an illusion that everything was arranged by this little girl in front of him. However, how could this be possible? The entrance to the earth fire was guarded by someone, and the earth fire pipeline was buried underground. She didn't have the ability to do anything. Could it really be the patriarch's warning? Soon, Manager Song received a reply from the pill refining room. Everything was as usual and there was no problem. This time Hall Master Luo and the others immediately became listless. No matter how unwilling they were in their hearts, they could only leave dejectedly. The disciples who were eating melon seeds immediately cheered, as if this was their victory. Manager Song wiped the cold sweat on his head. He always felt that this matter was so unbelievable. However, now that the plaintiff did not pursue the matter, he naturally would not be so stupid as to offend Yun Chujio. Yun Chujio, since the 8 hall masters have already let you go, you can go back now. Yun Chujio nodded and said a few polite words before leaving the discipline hall under the escort of the crowd. Hall Master Zhuge and Zhuge Dong followed behind the crowd with blank faces. They kept feeling that everything was like a dream. Only then did Zhuge Dong recall that the earth fire of their number 9 sword forging hall yesterday evening was also not quite normal. It was just that it was not as obvious as the other few. Could it really be a warning from the patriarch? The news quickly spread to the higher-ups of the sect and Master Ouyang. Master Ouyang was dumbfounded. Eating a poisonous mushroom could not only create 3 sword moves, but it could also receive the warning from the patriarch? Soon, a disciple in charge of managing the earth fire went to the forging sword hall in the lower house to check the situation. Unfortunately, he could not find out the reason. Moreover, he found that with the passage of time, the situation of the earth fire had actually begun to improve on its own. It was simply mysterious. Therefore, this matter became an unsolved case. They could only attribute it to the patriarch's warning. Then the problem came. Should they teach the sword forging technique to the public? The sect immediately fell into another argument. For a moment it was extremely noisy. It was estimated that there would not be any conclusion in a short while. However, this matter made Yun Chujio's poisonous mushroom incident even more mysterious. It was to the extent that a few stupid disciples deliberately ate the poisonous mushroom to imitate it and almost lost their lives. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.